got travel to
Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to our board meeting, and I'd like to thank everybody who is attending and tuning in to us tonight. We began at 6 o'clock for our closed meeting session dealing with personnel issues. We are now back in open session. I would like to start with approval of the minutes from our last two meetings. We had a regular board meeting in April and a special board meeting at the beginning of May.
I move approval.
Second.
Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next, I need approval of the agenda. And any changes, Randy?
Nope, as written.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any public comments?
Just the ones that came in writing.
So I would like to acknowledge that we did have some come in that all the board members have received and have read, and I just want to acknowledge that we did have some public comments come in. Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing on the bilingual program. You want to talk about
I'm going to
that?
ask Chris Mann to step up and sit at the front of the table, and if Rebecca can pull up her presentation. Last month, we also had a hearing on regulatory flexibility. This was with regards to some DPI aspects for the current year. What we're bringing forward tonight is really a consideration for next year out of some information and data that Chris and her team brought forward to me in the last month or so, and we felt asking for a waiver at this point for next year so that we can put a plan in place for a bilingual bicultural program. So I want to give her just a moment to give a very short presentation on what this is. And this part of the meeting is a public hearing where if there are public comments, they can be proffered. But then we'll have an action item on the actual submission of the waiver later on in the agenda. So Chris, I'll let you take it away.
I also want to welcome Dan Carter. Thank you for joining us. And then Ashley Taylor, our English as a second language or ESL teacher at Heritage. So I appreciate them being here as well. So in your board package, you received an English learner programming very brief PowerPoint, which we have up here today. I really just want to spend a few minutes going over our current English learner programming and staffing, talk about our enrollment trends with our English learners, and then talk about proposed next steps for the bilingual bicultural education programming. So our current English learner programming, we utilize an English as a second language or ESL instructional model. So it's very content-based. Our ESL teachers are reinforcing vocabulary and language that is based on class content. Recently, we've also started offering more newcomer programming as well, specifically at our high school level, to help our students who have very little to no English. And so we're really working to front load some of those basic language and content skills. We currently this year have 4 ESL teachers and 1 ESL paraeducator. And then also in our district this year, we have 4 staff members who have a bilingual license. And this will be more important here in a few slides from now. I just want to clarify that our 4 ESL teachers are not the same 4 staff members with that bilingual license.
Oh, yeah.
So here is just a brief chart or just a snapshot of some of our English learner growth over the years. You can see we're continuing to grow with the number of English learners we do have in Waunakee. And the bottom line, the bottom trend line is our Spanish-speaking EL students. And although our Spanish-speaking EL students represent the largest group of English learners in our district, it's certainly not all of them. This year, our ESL teachers have been providing support for English learners who come from or represent 12 different languages. And that doesn't surprise me, because when you look at our home language survey this year, we have 24 different home languages spoken in our school district, so quite diverse. Just a side note I want to add on with the enrollment is that Randy and Steve and I have been talking a little bit. We're hoping to increase our EL staffing with very minimal budget impact because we're looking to utilize a transfer of service. So more information will be coming on that. I just wanted to kind of put that out there as something that's going to be coming your way. So you might have seen in this slideshow that there are state statutes that require us to establish a bilingual program when we hit a specific threshold. So we have there's 3 purple bullets, those are the thresholds. That first one, if we have 10 or more EL students in a particular language group that are K through 3rd grade, in a particular school, we must establish a bilingual program, and we have met that threshold at Heritage this year. And that's, I mean, we haven't hit the other thresholds, but there you can see the other. It gets a little bit larger as the kids get older. And the state statutes also give us a little more guidance on what is required in that bilingual programming. And so some of the requirements are that bilingual programs must be taught by a licensed bilingual teacher. If, or maybe I should say when, we reach that threshold at the high school where we would need a bilingual program, we also would need a bilingual counselor. So the bilingual instruction is in reading, writing, and speaking. And we certainly have some options. We can get a little creative if we want to look at combining schools, especially if we start a bilingual program at Heritage, allowing Arboretum or Prairie students to attend might be an option. It's certainly something we can look at. And then all of our students who are eligible for bilingual bicultural programming, they are eligible until they would test out of English Learner Services. So the proposed next steps are that we work with DPI and we get that flexibility waiver submitted, and then we with CISA 2, they have a language and culture center, and they have consultants that are willing to help us develop an effective and meaningful program for our school district and what works best for Waunakee. I have been in touch with CISA 2. We've talked about doing a complete program analysis in the fall to look at our current EL programming. This is a good time to do that, because our demographics are changing and our needs are changing, and then move into planning that bilingual program. So that is what I have for you this evening, and we have, all three of us are here to answer any questions you might have.
So just to add quickly to it, Chris, you've also contacted DPI, talked to them about these requirements, and the concept of the waiver for planning purposes was part that came out and grew out of some of that discussion.
Yes.
So that what we're trying to do is really kind of still service our students that we have who are in our EL program, but then get that waiver so that we can do a good job putting a robust bilingual bicultural program together in the subsequent year. So this part of the meeting is really the hearing piece. It certainly can be a point where we take dialogue. It's also a place where folks from the public could provide input, and then this is an action item later on in the agenda.
So do kids grow out of EL?
Oh, actually, you can talk about how they test in, test out.
Absolutely. So the standard way that students exit from the EL program is through an access test. Students take what's called the Access for ELs every year. And then they receive a score between 1 and 6, a 6 being fully proficient, a 1 being more of a newcomer. Once they reach a 5.0 overall, they are automatically exited from the program. Once they reach in the upper 4.7, 4.8, we can look at doing a multiple indicators protocol, which includes either classroom observations or kind of a writing, looking at their writing to determine whether or not we feel that their classroom performance indicates that they're ready to exit from the program. After that, they're monitored for 2 years to make sure that they're still being successful in their classes without support.
So of those students, we've got a rising population. You know, how many of those students have tested out, or?
None of them, or they wouldn't be counted as an EL. So if we have plenty of students whose parents require a translation, or they were former ELs, but they're no longer identified as English learners once they test out. So this is all current. And we see that more, I would say, at the high school level where they've tested out. So they were English learners, but now they're not identified as that.
Does this program, or does the teaching take place in the regular classroom, or did they get pulled out into a center, per
Our
se?
current model?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a little bit of both. I try to work within the classroom as much as possible, so they're receiving all of their content instruction. Sometimes if the situation allows, maybe they're doing guided reading rotations, or it's at another point during the day, I can and will pull if that works best for the situation. But for the most part, I do try to do a push-in.
Do we have students where they're native speaking in Spanish or Mandarin or something like that, that are also fluent in English, that help tutor?
Not within the elementary level. I think that they probably do utilize kind of a peer tutoring. It's to some degree in the secondary level.
We actually have some high school students we are looking to be having as teacher assistants for summer school because we have some newcomer students with very little English that want to sign up for summer school, and then we have some fully proficient juniors and seniors who might want to work as teacher assistants and help out at summer schools. So we do try to match.
I bring that up, we have family friends who are at Middleton, and she's from a Chinese family, so, but she's born in the United States, so she's right now tutoring a child from China that just came in the 5th grade and doesn't know a lick of English, and so she's trying to catch her up on stuff. I just thought it was a sort of a neat idea, so.
Okay.
If the waiver were granted, what would these students not be receiving this year that they would receive if the program were fully operational as required?
So what's the difference between the ESL model we're currently doing and what a bilingual program would offer?
Yeah, because you would, during this next year, you would basically keep doing what you've been
Correct.
doing while you develop
While we're
it.
developing.
So what would they not be receiving?
I think they'd be receiving the same services as we're planning the bilingual programming, and then the bilingual program is specific English and Spanish, in this case, instruction in the speaking, reading and writing. So right now they're getting supplemental ESL content-based reinforcement of language and vocabulary, then they would be actually getting instructed in both Spanish and English.
So the difference would be whether they're receiving some form of, let's call it tutoring time, I guess, where they're being helped, being shown what they may be missing in class, versus having their class literally taught in both languages.
Yeah, I would say.
Is that the main
Similar.
difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think part of what we're asking the waiver for is as we hit those thresholds just recently, putting together that program, just as you articulated, Dave, takes a little bit of time and planning because it is a shift of instruction. One is definitely a support model for the students. Obviously, there's instruction that's taking place with them. The other one absolutely is an instructional shift from where we're at, from my understanding of the programs.
And my understanding is there's quite a few different options for bilingual programming. We just need to find what's the best fit for our students and families, and so we'll explore those options and look at that.
As this is developed, based on the number of trends you're seeing, this is going to start working its way up through all the
Correct.
grades.
Yeah.
So are we doing this as a holistic for all grades approach or only for heritage?
Well, I think that's part of what the work group will continue to look at. Probably how do we expand this? Maybe start at the K-3, and then how does it continue to grow? That will definitely be a goal.
So one of the things you talked about was you can expand this program without budget impacts. Where do you get the funding?
So the transfer of service, and I don't know if Steve's on, he wanted to talk maybe a little bit about that, but I don't, is he on that? Using a transfer of service, and Randy or Steve, I'd welcome you, or Kurt
Yes.
even has used transfer of service for special education, how that quite works with have minimal budget.
So we've had students who've moved in recently. I mean, some of the numbers that we're talking about, I think in the last number of weeks, we have like 10 kids.
We had
who
10
come
in
to us.
April.
We can request, as you've seen through other requests that have come through the board, a transfer of service request, which is a piece then that we would put in the subsequent year, and there are some dollars that then follow that. But definitely, this is an area that's going to have continued costs to it moving forward. We'll maximize those as much as possible, but it does fall under one of those mandates that we have from the state that doesn't have funding that follows it. But it's still a piece that we're required to put in place, and it's the right, when you get to those levels of students, it's the right move to be making. We're just finally at that point where it's going to prompt us to have this discussion and move it on. But I think the year of the waiver to put it in place and vet out those models, bring that back to the board so that we know exactly what model fits for us, I think that's the right choice.
So when you talk about transfer of payments, these students are coming from another district?
Yeah. So the transfer of service is when you have a student transferring from another district, and then you can put in with the state to have some additional dollars that follow that child.
But over time, we would have to start the budget for that as that transfer of service would run out.
Yeah, this is going to be a piece we're going to have on our radar from a funding perspective moving forward, because particularly as we're seeing, as we gain more families, the trend will most likely be that you'll have more families also follow as well, and that will increase our population.
How close are we in other languages, meeting that threshold?
I believe we're around 5 at Arboretum for Mandarin,
Okay.
but mainly I would say Spanish. Intermediate, is going to have the bubble eventually from Heritage, and Intermediate's got quite a variety of languages represented, and I would say Spanish is probably prevalent the most in all of our buildings, except for Arboretum where it's Mandarin.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the proposal.
Actually,
That-
it's done later in the agenda,
Oh.
so we're just,
Okay.
this is just information right now.
Yeah, this is just the
Okay,
hearing, the
sorry.
public hearing piece. I did put it on the agenda later.
Okay.
So if there are no more questions, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Um,
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Ashley.
Yes, thank you very much. Moving on to our reports tonight, we are going to start, Ashley, you can just stay up there. We're going to start with Ashley for the teacher report.
Well, I just want to start off by congratulating Ted on his election and Mark on your re-election, and then congratulations to all on your board reorganization. And then I also wanted to appreciate you all and our students and our families and our PTOs for everything that they did last week for Teacher Appreciation Week. I know our staff really appreciated everything that was done for us. And then just a few things happening as we wind down in the school year. I know Heritage wanted to share that second grade is really working on cleaning up the courtyard area, and they're utilizing the greenhouse. So it's great to see those spaces put to good use. The WTA is also doing a highway cleanup this week, so that'll be nice to give back to the community a bit. And then finally, I just wanted to recognize your consideration of negotiating for CPI this spring. I've been in the district for 10 years and I've never signed a contract knowing what my salary would be going into the following school year. And we've heard from many staff members that that's something that's very important to them. And so I just thank you for your consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ashley.
Thank you.
And now our student report, Quinn and Anna, or just Quinn?
Just me today.
All right. We're happy to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess we'll just get started with some things from student council. So the school year's ending, so we are kind of wrapping things up. We just had our elections for the next year. So yeah, people are voting on that right now. We all did a little speech over Zoom. We recently had a few students do some posters and things for teacher appreciation. Otherwise, I think we have a walk/run planned soon. I don't know too much information on that because I'm not in that committee. But I've heard that's being planned soon. It might be in the summer, I'm not quite sure. Otherwise, we're basically just wrapping things up for student council. We're trying to transition into the new officers and everything for next year. I know we have a blood drive set up over the summer, but that's for a bit yet. Otherwise, I think that's it for student council wise. Otherwise, in the school, I know AP testing has started, so a lot of students are in that. I know some exams are virtual and some of them are on paper, so it's a little different for each class. But I think they're all going really well. I haven't had any yet myself, but tomorrow, yeah. And otherwise, like lacrosse has started up. The boys have a game right now. We just checked, it's 9-0, so that's exciting.
Wow.
Yeah, but track is starting up, other spring sports, and I think everything's going really well in the school.
Awesome.
Yeah, do you guys have any questions?
Quinn, do you know who our student reps will be next year?
Oh, I know of one. I'm not sure if she's going to get a partner, but as of right now, it's Izzy Hahn. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quinn.
Wonderful.
So will this be your last meeting?
I think, will it? I'm not sure exactly.
We really appreciate all the information that you've brought us. It's always a delightful part of our meeting to hear what's going on. So
Thank
thank you
you.
very much for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you guys. I know this definitely has not been a simple year. So, thank you all.
Thank you, and please thank Anna.
Yes, will do.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Next, if there's any board member that has done anything, training or meetings that they'd like to share? Been kind of hard. Mark, do you have something?
No.
No. You were adjusting. I thought maybe you did.
No.
So moving on to committee assignments, which were put into board books. Tried to make everybody happy with their number 1 or 2 choice. Sometimes I could do with both, but we had to fill the roster in all of them. So I hope that those are all in agreement. We do need 2 representatives for the diversity ad hoc committee. So please just let me know if you're interested in that. I'm not sure when their next meeting is.
The 19th.
The 19th. Thank you, Rebecca. And if you could let me know if you'd be interested in serving in that capacity, I would appreciate that. Moving on to the Visionary Ad Hoc Committee that Jack brought forth last month. Jack, any new thoughts on that?
Well, I think we kind of talked about it at our reorg meeting, and maybe it's not a committee, maybe it's setting up, bi-weekly meetings, but I think.
Bi-monthly.
Or bi-monthly meetings where we could, get specific topics discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And, it kind of lines up with some of our board activity, kind of lines up with the retreat, so that we can start to do more visionary type planning at the retreat going forward,
Mm-hmm.
making the investments that are required. So I think, and like any good, this is a business, right? And businesses go out and talk to their customers, and their customers, are taxpayers that provide funding, support and volunteer help and everything that we ask them to do. So I think it would be a great opportunity, and maybe what you do is you try it for a year, and if it doesn't work, then you repackage it for the following year. But I think there's a lot of people that want to provide input, or at least suggestions, and I think that helps us as we're around the board table to gather some of that information, so that as we are making decisions, it's more productive and it meets the needs of our community and customers.
I know that Annie is going to later talk about her 6 to 8 week communication engagement kind of audit. And as we go through that process, maybe we can tie this into that.
I think that would make sense. I think once Andy goes through that, then we could actually bring back kind of a structure that kind of is, as Jack has stated, get feedback from the board as far as some of the technical pieces and the timing. So we'll definitely include that as part of that process, and you'll see that this summer.
As far as the board is concerned, is that just if we open it up to a live event, is that public enough for, we don't have to limit the number of board members there?
We would probably just post it as such without any action. It's a listening session of the board or input session. We've done those in the past, so it would definitely be a piece that we could notice it appropriately so that everybody could be in attendance.
I would also submit that you can open it up to a public meeting, but you also have, we're pretty efficient at Zoom these days. So, and I think you're probably going to get more participation potentially with Zoom, because we're all busy, and they can potentially jump on. And, I wouldn't limit it just to the parents, but, teachers want to participate in this. I think, it's good, for them. And that way we've got everybody talking, right?
I think that's a good idea.
As opposed to, one group and another group. If we're all trying to do the same mission on moving education forward, then, we should open it up to everybody that's participating.
Okay, great, thank you. Committee report, starting with medical ad hoc that met April 13th.
No action items.
No Nothing there? Okay, curriculum committee meeting. I know there's quite a few things here. Judy, you're going to do this, or?
I think Tim was going to speak.
Yeah, several things to vote
Cover,
on.
yeah.
Right, so we had several items in there. So kind of going from top to bottom, I should probably pull out my board book because we have the Zoom up there. So the first item we had was our set of textbook requests for this year. And in general, these are mostly updates to versions we've had in the past, just for a little more currency, and in some cases, a hybrid approach. And then you can also see the expense piece kind of in the spreadsheet. So that was recommended out of the committee on a vote. After that, we had our curriculum projects list for the summer. And these are the requests that were submitted by staff during the development process this winter and spring. That also was advanced out of the committee on a vote. We had actually an item that was brought in at the March 31st meeting that was before you as an information item. Last month, information was shared with elementary families through the newsletter, and that is included as an action item for this month. It's appearing under curriculum committee, but it is something you actually saw for the first time last month. And then we have the virtual learning recommendations as well. So there's a lot we covered. I think the first step would be
Maybe vote on those.
the textbooks and then the curriculum projects first before we move through the sequence.
Yeah, so let's vote on the two items, the textbook request and the curriculum writing for the summer request. And
I think you can take them together if you choose. Otherwise, if there are any questions that you want to vet out with either of those, you could take them separately, either one.
Motion to approve both as presented.
Second.
any discussion on any of the textbook or the curriculum writing projects that were proposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. So the elementary music program, which has been, the proposal is to move it to a spring event away from the holiday program.
Yes, and so, you have the proposal that came from our music team, as well as the update that was shared with families. And I can speak to it some, but if you have more in-depth questions, Amy could speak to it in greater depth if there are questions. If you have had the opportunity to watch the curriculum committee meeting from March 31st, you would have had the opportunity to see our elementary music team kind of share their thinking about what are the rationales behind the desire for the change. It's mainly due to the fact that they feel they can do a better job of showing what the students have done in the performance by moving it later in the year, particularly with the younger learners. It's not a lot of time to put something on, and then also by moving it later in the year, you have an option to perform a greater variety of music. So those are their interests in advancing it. We had it, I think, Amy went home in all the newsletters 2-3 weeks ago. And I think we've maybe received, to my knowledge, one comment about it. I think that was it. Amy, do you have more to add?
So there wasn't much feedback then from the parents?
No, we created a email address for families to reach out and correspond with the music staff, and that email received no emails. And then Tim received one email directly from a parent, and that's the only feedback that we have received and that the music department has received.
When this came through the curriculum committee asked that this be on 2 agendas, that it be brought forward as an information item on the first opportunity, and then that there would also be outreach to families as far as letting them know that this was an item being considered. So it's been on the last 2 weeks. The newsletters coming out of the schools and the Thursday folders. There's been an email address established. Molly Petroff, the department chair of the music department, was working with Tim and Amy on the messaging and the plan. And certainly at the curriculum committee, you heard from the elementary music staff who brought the proposals forward.
Tim, I'm hoping you can support me on my perception, but this is not a new concept that they've been working on. As a board member, I believe I've heard this as long as 4 years ago. And so it's been something that they've been looking at how to articulate the skill and the learning better over time. And it's just come to us at this point. But they've been working on this for quite some time, thinking about it and that sort of thing. It's not like a new idea that popped up.
You're correct, Mark. I mean, this has been really for as long as I can think an area where the elementary music staff have advocated they could teach their program better, they could put on a more comprehensive performance if it were later in the year instead of coming up approximately a third to 40% of the way through the year, particularly for the younger students where they're trying to develop those skills and relationships. I mean, I think if I recall properly, back when we had our curriculum committee meeting on the 31st of March, there's a reference made to, when you've got little kids and you're trying to teach them the recorder, how much can you really do by the time you have to really begin to finalize numbers and really polish them up for a performance? So, this has been a long-term topic of discussion. I think had we not run into the pandemic last March, there would have been a proposal along these lines that would have advanced about a year ago.
I'll make a motion to move this proposal forward.
I mean, there's had kids at the school and gone through that, and they've had performances, and there's never been any issue. I mean, I get that you'd want to put more time into doing something better. If I think back to our kids went to Arboretum, they'd have the holiday one, there'd be other individual classrooms that they may have other performances. I know some of them did, so does that, now you're going to have a couple of performances maybe that the kids go through? Not school related, but then each individual classroom has something at the end. So, you know what I mean? Does that conflict with other stuff?
I don't know of any current spring performance, individual class spring performance that we're currently doing.
Each classroom always has something. Well, I shouldn't say each always has something, but mine, because my kids were in ones where they did that. So then
a music performance?
Yep, it would be combined, and it would just be, it's just what you're proposing to get rid of or to push off is definitely I think a tradition that parents look forward to. It always comes at the holiday time, so then all of a sudden it's gone because you can't get ready, even though you were able to do it in the past, but now you're just you think need more time.
Yeah, I think some of the things I heard, Ted, were with regards to the holiday. Let's just talk through it from where it lands. It lands at a point in time where it has become kind of a holiday program.
Yep.
It's certainly become piece of one of the things curricular-wise is to offer a performance objective for the students to participate in. And I think listening to the instructors as they've been trying to put together the program around the holidays and around the themes that we've traditionally done those, they feel that it's becoming more and more challenging and narrowing kind of curricular-wise, kind of what they're able to do and teach, and as far as how far, like just trying to, there's not as many options that they would find available to them as if they had the opportunity to do really kind of a very evolving and changing program in the spring. So it's definitely that you can do a program at the time of the year. We've done it for quite a few years. I think they feel like the kids will be in a place where they can do a very high quality program if it's not tied to that period of the year and use it as a culminating activity. I think that's generally what I've heard from our music instructors as their desire for trying to make that move, and just feeling like that they get narrowed down quite a bit as far as their options as they're doing it at the December timeframe.
Like, how do you mean narrowed options? What's narrow?
I think you're narrowing it down in two respects. One of them being, right now they have a number of programs that they've been doing, and right now every district, every school is doing the same program. And you're trying to touch on, and it is some of the pieces of trying to have a multicultural program occurring around the holiday program, and then finding pieces that fit in for all of the different ages of learners. As Tim said, the example with the recorder is a good one, because they start preparing for this concert probably in middle of October. So they have had the kids for a short period of time before they're preparing for it. And I think as they look at trying to move forward into the spring, they feel that they're going to have more options with regards to music that they can offer, programs they can offer, and they just feel that there's just a more robust opportunity to do more with the students than they're able to do at that time of the year. So certainly there are some challenges of trying to address the items around the holiday pieces and some of the limitations of that. But it's also specifically a piece that they've been talking to us for years before we ever got into discussions about holidays with regards to kind of the curriculum aspects and wanting to have be able to showcase all the things that they can teach the kids throughout the course of the year. So that's generally what the rationale is.
Brian?
I want to make a motion to move it forward.
Second.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I think, from a discussion standpoint, basically what you're trying to do is expose these kids to different things, and if they become a famous musician in the future, they become that. But I think taking this program away, one of the things I think we want to do is maintain that connection between parents and the school system. So they're coming in, they're not only coming to the program, but they're seeing the building and some of the things that we're doing in the building, some of the artwork maybe as they come through. So this is another opportunity where we don't have those parents coming, to the building.
But Jack, I do think they intend to have a similar program, but just move it to spring.
Right.
So I think that would still be during the day, and the parents would still be invited. It would be very similar, but instead of December, it would happen April, May.
I guess the question is don't we have two programs here?
No,
one.
just one.
Yeah, we have one performance every year. That's a formal performance of all the grade levels. And right now it's happening in December, so the staff are asking it to be a culminating activity of the year. And then it would be a very similar type thing during the day where parents can come in and be part of it.
Mark?
Perhaps I'm oversimplifying, but the way I understand it on a very simple level, as a music teacher, we start teaching musical skills the first part of the school year. Mm-hmm. Then we stop and teach holiday songs and how to perform them, which is totally separate from the skill sets that they're trying to teach. And then they get back after the holiday and start teaching the skill set. Whereas if they could spend that time teaching skills all the way through, the preparation at the end would be a much more skillful performance, because they've had more exposure to different types of learning activities with the music that they would be able to select from. So it goes really not from a skill set, but from a sort of preparing for performance set. And they feel very conflicted with what they're trying to do as teachers for their kids.
But, you know, just from music, if I remember right, you know, we had a Christmas concert, and then we had solo ensemble.
At the high school.
At the high school.
At the high school.
So this is just for the
This is-
elementary?
This is K4.
K4.
Oh, okay.
This is just K4. This has nothing to do with any of the other performance pieces, just the 3 elementary schools.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
Mark said it right. I mean, they're teachers. I mean, we don't step in and question a math teacher when they want to move something around a little bit. I mean, they are trying to teach music and enjoyment of music. So I don't think it should be based on a time of year. It's the time that those teachers, the experts, feel like they're ready to be able to perform at a higher level for their parents and be proud of it. So.
Exactly. Okay, we have a motion on the table. Are we ready to vote on that? Okay. Judy, did you have a comment? No.
Did we have a second on that?
Yes, we
Oh,
did.
we did.
Dave had a second. We have Brian and Dave. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Thank you. So now, Tim, you want to get into the virtual learning component?
Yes, we have, Rebecca, I don't know if we can bring up a slide, that part of the slide deck?
So we just have a few slides that we'll speak from, but there's a larger memo in your packet that outlines kind of our full process and our recommendations. So that has more of the detail. But first, I just want to start with kind of the overview or the aim of this committee. So there was the charge several months ago from the board to convene a work group to investigate options for the 21-22 school year. I want to be really clear that the scope of this work group was very narrow. While we've talked, possibly there would be interest in the future for expanding virtual options or investigating a virtual charter school, this was very narrow in focus just for next school year. Because we really want to be responsive to families due to COVID who may still be requesting a remote option. And then also responsive to families that found that this was a good fit for them. So I do think it is really important to note that we have been and will continue to fund remote learning either through open enrollment out, kind of indirectly funding that, or through our local options. So we have had limited secondary options in the past through the Wisconsin eSchool Network, of which we are an affiliate member. And so we have had a process. It's pretty limited in scope, but we have had a small scale secondary remote instruction in the past. So this group really is looking to expand that to K-6 and also make sure that it's accessible for secondary. So this next slide outlines a little bit about our process. So you can see on the right there, we had a representative committee that Tim and I co-chaired. We had administrators at each level. We had a variety of teachers, student support staff. We really tried to be intentional to get as many voices as we could around the table to work on this. So we did several surveys. We did an educator survey to kind of get general interest about teachers being interested in pursuing remote instruction for the future. And then we also had 2 family surveys. One was just kind of a general survey about their interest, and that was in February and March. And then in April, we asked for a non-anonymous kind of specific survey. You know, if you are truly seriously interested, please give us your name, grade level of your students, so that we can include you in the process. Page 2 and 3 of the memo has all of that data chart that you can see the types of numbers that we've had for interest. So for K6, we had, across all 7 of those grades, 36 students who said yes, they were definitely interested. Some more were unsure. When you dig into those unsure comments, it's really just about uncertainty of COVID typically. And then at the high school level, we had a kind of more of a gradient for responses, but we had 33 712 students who were definitely interested, and then others, who were possibly interested, and so forth. So as also part of the study process, we worked with a CISA consultant to really provide some overview of a variety of digital learning options to the committee. And Tim will be talking a little bit more about those. You've probably heard a lot about concurrent instruction. This is our model at 712, where some students are remote while some students are in person. We are not recommending a concurrent model, which hopefully you noticed as you read through the memo. We will be talking about the models that we'll be looking at for a little bit later, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And then the committee met several times and really worked to articulate kind of the model that we would use, how we might fund it, and potential costs. So Tim will talk a little bit more about that now.
So after, considering the information, what we've done with the program pre-pandemic, the information we received from the staff surveys, the information we received from the family surveys, the recommendations the committee arrived at for next year are the types of pre-pandemic options we've had at the middle school and high school. They would continue. Now, typically, those have been a limited number of enrollments. Some are Phi-Ed. Students may be taking 1, maybe 2 classes during the year to accommodate their schedule. In limited numbers of cases, we've had high-level amateur students in the arts or athletics where they travel outside the area, and to accommodate their schedules, they might be in a full-time program. We've had some students with unique medical situations that have been in a full-time program, but most of this would be a student incidentally picking up a course or 2 to make their schedule operate better. Almost exclusively at the high school, a few middle school students. So we would continue that. We would add an option for families in all grades. So this would add on an eligibility factor at the middle school and high school. If a family felt they had a COVID-related reason for going to full-time, they could enroll in that. We would extend that down into the intermediate and the elementary schools as well. We'd be asking for a semester commitment, so it would not be, I want to try virtual learning for September, October, but then I might pivot back towards the end of October. This would be for a commitment, and we have some reasons for that due to the types of time commitments we're asking for teachers, also due to some of the licensing requirements we would have for the course content. We would be encumbering costs by semester, so we would want that semester commitment and not a lot of in and outing. Now, what that format would look like would depend on our participation level. Where we had participation that reached our typical minimum class size, which is usually around 15 students per section, we would look to offer that section as parallel or as close to parallel as possible to the face-to-face curriculum. There'd have to be some modifications for the environment, but it would be hosted on our local Schoology learning management system. We'd be utilizing Zoom. There'd be a synchronous component, and we really would be trying to provide as close as possible to our local Waunakee curriculum if we got to those levels of approximately 15 students per section. That's what we call the split section model or the parallel curriculum model. Where participation is below 15 per class, we would provide what we're calling the virtual academy model. And that's where we'd be working with the eSchool network that we are members of to access their repository of classes where the curriculum is designed nationally by vendors like Florida Virtual School, Carbone, Middlebury College, others specifically for online learning, that would look different than our parallel curriculum. It would meet standards, but it would be designed much more for asynchronous, self-paced instruction. There would be some teacher check-ins, but it would definitely be much more in the asynchronous role. Teachers that would be participating in that would be providing feedback on the student progress. They'd be grading it, but it would look different than the full split scheduling local session. The recommendation is, as much as possible, we would use our own teachers. And finally, the other recommendation looks beyond 21, 22, and we would continue the study process to look at refinements to what we were doing and potentially grow it further. There have been some conversations around this table that it might be a good idea for us to expand the program further by offering a virtual charter school where we could potentially attract students from outside our resident population. That would allow us, in theory, to get to that 15 per section threshold more and move more towards a local parallel curriculum. Now, realistically, given the elective nature, in particular of our high school schedule, at the high school level outside the cores, we probably couldn't replicate our entire curriculum there, just because if there's an elective, we're only offering 1 or 2 sections of right now in a given year. We're very unlikely to have enrollment even opening to a virtual charter to offer a standalone virtual section. Of course, if the enrollment is there, we would happily do it. But even in a virtual charter model, there would still be a place in all likelihood for the self-paced courses. But a virtual charter in the long run could get us to offering more things, more options via kind of a parallel curriculum.
Tim, if I'm a student that wants to be 100% virtual at the high school, and some sections are offered and some aren't, would I be doing sort of a buffet between the split and the e-school, or would I have to be 100% in the state e-school?
We would offer the split sections as much as we could, Mark. Realistically, thinking about the high school and what we've seen in our surveys so far, the number of courses where we would probably get to the local curriculum in a split-off section is probably limited to a few core classes. You know, 9th grade biology,
Sure,
9th grade, and then you would have electives around that. So yes, it could be a blend.
Yeah.
So if we offered this next year, could we open it up to maybe homeschooled students that are in our district that could, participate in?
So, homeschool students who are resident pupils at any time can choose to re-enroll. So that's the first piece. The second piece is homeschooled students at any point in time can take up to 2 courses on site. And if we offered the virtual option, homeschool students, if they wish to, could take up to 2 of these virtual courses if they wanted to. That's an option they have always had under state law if they were resident pupils. Now, again, once we get out of the COVID flexibility, in order to have non-resident pupils in a virtual program, they have to go through open enrollment, like any other non-resident pupil.
So on the e-schooling portion, what is the control on the curriculum? What is the say? Will this individual graduate with a Waunakee degree, even though everything was course-wise potentially, not even Waunakee related in terms of curriculum?
They would. It's no different than if a student right now takes fitness fundamentals online in the summer. That's going to show as a FIAD course on their Waunakee transcript as part of graduation. Now, Could students come all the way through with 4 years at the high school? Conceivably, they could. I mean, that happens. We have not really seen that happen here, but there are other districts, Middleton, for example, where there are students who will come through with 4 years of all online, and they would receive a local diploma. Because all of these courses, even with the asynchronous, Ted, they're being facilitated by Wisconsin licensed teachers. Our teachers as much as possible, but even where we need to go to a state network section, that's going to be a Wisconsin licensed teacher. They could be employed by Baraboo, they could be employed by Kiel, Kimberly, Kenosha, but they would be Wisconsin licensed teachers. We would be partnering with them through the network, and they would still get their Waunakee diploma.
Thank you, Tim. Are we going to vote on this?
No, I think there's any other questions with regards to, I mean, part of the voting on it is also just understanding all the finances pieces of it, and I think that was part of your item within there as well. So as you're moving us forward, making sure that we have a full understanding of kind of what that piece looks like, so that you kind of have our eyes open as far as what the dollars are that we're putting as an outlet. And I think what we initially had thought was that this is definitely seed money to get it going, to then kind of look at this as a piece that we learn from the first year of implementation and then see how this expands into the future. I mean, certainly there's a piece that I think we need to be very cognizant of, is that if we don't offer something like this is just purely the business and financial side of the schools, parents can find these exact similar programs, Wisconsin e-network, Ted, as you kind of referenced, McFarland Virtual School, basically just down the road, they can open enroll their dollars that would be allocated to us would go then directly to McFarland. So this is partially in response to servicing our students, keeping them local, keeping a connection with our staff and our students here. In the absence of us offering it, it does open up the risk that you can lose kids open enrollment wise to other programs.
I apologize, but I want to recall. So we're looking at this for 712. Is there anything elementary we're looking at? That piece I didn't quite.
Yep. So, I mean, currently in previous years, this already was, albeit limited, an option at the secondary level. We would be expanding it to the elementary level, and it would be following exactly the same guidelines that Tim was saying. So if we happen to get, 15 third graders, we could have a fully remote section just like we did this year. If we did not, and as you probably saw in the memo, our numbers don't look like they would be, large enough in most cases to have a section. Then we would purchase courses from the eSchool network, so the Florida virtual courses that are, for elementary students, but as Tim was describing, it's much more asynchronous. And then we would have our teachers who would be paid a stipend for each class that they kind of taught. But again, it's not direct instruction, it's mostly grading and feedback and some check-ins. So yes, it would be a very similar model for K through 12.
Thank you.
So I guess, in some of this stuff might be self-paced, right? So if I'm a fast learner and I blow through this semester's worth of work in a quarter, then I just keep on going to the next. What if I run out of material, partially, maybe 3/4 through the semester and done? How do we keep that student engaged for the rest of the semester?
So, it certainly is the case where we've had some highly able students in the past, particularly if they fall off pace early. A highly able student, when very highly motivated by circumstances, can sometimes make pretty good progress through the components of a course. In general, when we have students enrolled under normal conditions, we see very few situations where they charge ahead. And it's not entirely It doesn't have to be completely self-paced. I mean, the teacher, this is in a learning management system. As a teacher, I can work with students, and if they have a reason, maybe there's a family vacation coming up, I can allow the student to work ahead quite a bit. But you can also put some restrictions on how far a student can work ahead. To again, try to get them to pace and not to rush through the content.
Yeah, just to add a couple of contexts, and I believe when we looked at this, the proposal that Tim and Amy are putting forth has a cost of just around $5,000 a student, generally in that neighborhood. For every student that moves out of our district, a resident student that chooses to go to a virtual academy elsewhere, that's a fund transfer of just over $8,000 out of our district. So to be able to keep them local, we're hopefully able to keep that around $5,000 in that range. If we don't offer the option, revenue does go the other direction at about just over $8,000 per student. So as we've looked at things during this year of COVID, we've certainly lost some of our students that did choose a different virtual option, even though we offered things here, that they went to other districts. Now, I think some of those, just from personal anecdotes, are coming back in person, and they were using that as kind of a one-year stopgap for them and their families. But certainly, if there are kids who have resonated with that virtual learning piece, those options exist. So our model, it does have a cost to it, about $5,000 in that neighborhood per student. Open enrollment out, if they chose that, would cost us $8,100 into the future per student. That would actually be a transfer to the other district.
And our cost estimates are based on the information we have from these initial family surveys. You know, as with so many things, as you scale up, you do get some operating efficiency. So, you know, where we get to 15 a section, instead of paying stipends, you reach that tipping point where you can actually assign it as part of the teaching load. The stipends go away because you've reached a section's worth of students. Likewise, and again, we projected based for the numbers we have. We don't think, we don't want to extrapolate behind what we have information for, but there are some scaling opportunities that could come in with the course fees if you got to much higher rates of participation. But based on the interest we've had in the surveys that we've been conducting this spring, this is what we see as kind of maybe a low bound and a high bound. If you do authorize us to go ahead, we'll be looking to get something out to families in the very near future, try to secure their interest. Once we know who's interested, we can then clarify, have we reached that threshold of the 15 per section where it's parallel versus the academy. We would then come back to families and clarify exactly what the experience might look like for their child. So if that would impact their decision, they would have a chance to adjust their decision, and then we could move ahead. I mean, particularly for the middle school and especially the high school, knowing where some of these students' course interests are coming is really important to know for master scheduling, which they're very eager to get done before teachers leave in June.
I would also add in that this is kind of a product of post-pandemic, because many districts that looked at virtual learning, we've all had options where we could do kind of different levels of blended models with kids over time. Certain districts have chosen to go that virtual charter route, which is obviously a very robust full curriculum for students. What I see right now is most districts post-pandemic are coming out and putting efforts into doing exactly what we're talking about here. How do we offer a more robust program for those students who have either resonated or have reasons to want to stay virtual for next year and into the future? So it's definitely kind of a market shift that I would see within education, is that virtual learning is going to be a piece that is going to be incorporated into most school districts.
I agree with you, Randy. I agree with you, Randy, and I mean, our college students are going to be taking remote classes, even though they're sitting on campus. It's just what's happening. What do we see as a commitment? A semester commitment, if somebody would do this, and then a semester they could rethink? Okay.
So using the numbers you have right now, what's the total projected cost?
So On the memo, we currently have a low and a high scenario, and those are, again, just best estimates. So the low scenario, we take the yeses from the K-6 surveys, and we take the definitely's
The other one.
from the 712 surveys,
There you go.
and we apply our cost factors by grade level. And we would project that would come in to somewhere around $322,000 rounding up, plus some miscellaneous summer curriculum project work. The high participation scenario keeps those yes commitments and those definitely commitments, and then looks at the folks who didn't respond. So what is the gap between our survey participants and our enrollment per grade level? And we assume for the people that didn't respond to the survey, we count their interest at, say, 75%. We are making an assumption that the people who are most interested in this have responded to the surveys. They've received the request twice. So the high participation rate assumes that there are other interested families out there with interested students, and we apply a 75% rate to that to get to the high number. And again, this is extrapolating from surveys that we completed a few weeks ago at all levels.
So you're between $300,000 and $400,000, Mark, is kind of what you're, depending on your enrollment projections per what's in the memo. This is the higher one at the 431. The previous page is at 321.
Would this be a COVID expense?
It certainly can be part of it can be part of our federal dollars, I believe, correct?
And again, these estimates are for next year only, because we would continue the committee where you can scale up, the costs are going to shift. And particularly if you begin to attract non-resident students in, were we to do a charter, and I'm not advocating for that one way or the other, but I'm just observing, Randy's referenced when we have students open and roll out to a virtual charter, we're writing an $8,100, well, Steve is writing a $8,100 check. And were that situation to be reversed, then for non-resident pupils that would come in, and we're not in a position at all to do this for 21-22, but our planning process could continue to future years, then that potentially could be a situation, as with our other open enrollment students, where there's a transfer from the resident district.
So basically, let's say we assumed a low number of 69 doing it, and you took it at the 8,000 a year if they open and rolled out, you're looking at $560,000.
That is correct.
And if you go to the high number, you're looking at basically double that, so about 1.2 million. And to offset that, we're going to spend either $300,000 or $400,000.
Yeah. And of course, the challenge is when students open and roll out, it's not like they open and roll out in nice section-sized chunks. You take a shave here, a shave there, the revenue moves out, but the cost savings are challenging to capture internally.
Yeah,
it's not a situation we want to find ourselves in.
I was looking at that when I looked at your cost chart, and it's just like, well, where would we save money? Oh, you're right, we're never going to save money on this anyway.
Not in a convenient way.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you looking for a motion to move forward or to keep planning?
We would actually like a motion to move forward.
So,
Because this is the point where we need to get the commitments and start putting all these things in place.
I'll make that motion to move
Second.
forward. I think there is a need in our district for this, and this is the way education's moving, and we don't want to lose any more students in our district, so I would make a motion that we continue to move forward with this.
Second.
And Mark had a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a report from
I want to stay there
the
for
Diversity
media.
Ad Hoc Committee. Tim, are you going to do that report, or?
I think Tim's going to talk about it. I haven't been able to make meetings.
Yeah, so I mean, the minutes are in the agenda, and one of the major activities the committee's working towards is completing our equity audit. It's a very comprehensive process. It really entails the committee looking at just about every facet, if not every facet, of what we do and trying to evaluate how well we're doing it and how equitable our approaches are. And I think it's been a very valuable process. It's not a fast process because you have to provide a level of information to the committee so they feel comfortable with it. And again, it's important to remember we have a committee that not only includes staff members, we have a few students on there, we have parents and other community members. Some of this information is very new to them, but they're working very hard and they're very focused on the work. So I would say we are a little over 2/3 of the way through the equity audit. Once we finish that, we'll kind of see, where the committee is after reorganization, and we do have some graduating seniors, and we probably do need to see, and again, we have some families moving out of the area. We probably need to look to the membership of the committee a little bit, I feel. But I think the plan all along was once the committee was completed with the audit, the committee would then go back and take stock of the work and identify some focus areas for the district to continue on. And then the committee would continue to kind of review issues, give progress reports, and continue to be a valuable sounding board for us. There have been some items that have already been referred out of committee, but they really haven't been the fruits of the equity audit itself. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the committee offers to us as suggestions once that audit's completed.
When do you anticipate the audit to be complete?
Well, we have a meeting on the 19th. We also have a meeting, I want to say, is it the 3rd, Rebecca?
Yes.
And so we've got 2 more meetings on the books. We might finish the audit by the June meeting, and then do we continue with night meetings? Do we schedule a summit during the day? It's not for me to say. That's really for the committee to decide. Mike Grant and Joel Lewis have been co-chairing the committee, with Mike coming off the board. Joel is really taking on the leadership of that committee. I think he's doing a wonderful job. Joel is excellent to work with. And so we'll just have to kind of take stock at our meeting on the 19th, kind of how we finish up our next phase of work.
Understood.
Thank you, Jim. Moving on to the Budget Committee. Jack or Steve?
Steve, I'll turn that over to you.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate that. The Budget Committee discussed a number of items at the meeting on May 3rd. We're going to review the ones that are moving forward for the full board for consideration tonight. The first one is a review of the first draft of the budget. I think it's important to just note that the state is going through a state budget process. So at this point in time, even though it's May, we do not know the resources that will be available to us as a school district at the start of our fiscal year, which is July 1st. So we have worked with the Budget Committee to come up with some planning parameters where the Budget Committee members had an opportunity to provide input on planning for our next fiscal year. So in the board book notes, you see some information on what that planning process looks like. We are currently planning on fewer resources being available to us than what the governor has requested through his budget document. That puts us in a position that if revenues are increased at a later point in time, that'll just result in additional resources for the district. The first draft of the budget does include additional positions. Those have been reviewed with the Budget Committee during the past couple of meetings. We do have class size information that we shared with the Budget Committee. We've reviewed the shared staffing for grades 7 through 12, and have really put together a document that meets all of the requests that we've put forward at this point for positions, planning for salaries, planning for benefits, and taking into account the resources that we're going to have available to us from the state of Wisconsin. In addition, you will see there's a slide that was attached in board book that came from the special board meeting on May 21st, where administration requested the opportunity to move forward with some school board priorities in this budget planning process. Rebecca, would you mind opening that slide for a moment? Thank you. So we spent some time at the committee meeting reviewing this slide and talking through those requests that met the school board's priorities and goals for next year. We did talk about making sure that we could pay for some of the items on this list with carryover funds. That would be the district branding process or the music equipment. But the remaining costs on this page, administration did request from the budget committee to move forward with these positions, to move forward with the posting, to continue to address the priorities and goals established by the school board. If you want to go back, Rebecca. And then the last attachment is the board members from the budget committee did have a request for some follow-up information regarding the request that you saw on the slide before. So if I could throw this back over to Randy to just review this information that's been included in your packet.
Yeah, there were a few questions with regards to the interventionists and the tech position. So I asked Amy Johnson to put some context to this. So I appreciate you being here, Amy, just to kind of walk through kind of the updates and more specificity on these proposals.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to clarify, some educational jargon, the term interventionist. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear on what this position is. In the past, we have hired coaches and interventionists, and sometimes I think those terms get confused. So I just wanted to be really clear about what these positions were and where we were hoping to add them. So an interventionist is a licensed teacher who provides additional instruction in reading or math to small groups of students. And it is, outside of the regular ELA or math block. We use a large number of different data points to identify the kids who are most in need of intervention. And then we match those kids based on their need with the intervention that they need and then the interventionist. So as part of that process, we are constantly kind of reviewing the data. And a lot of times at the elementary, this is pretty fluid. Once a kid kind of accelerates out, we are able to move someone else on the list. So we're always looking at the assessment data. 3 big times during the year, but as I said, it can be pretty fluid too. So on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about how it is different K-6 and 7-12. So K-6, we do have a separate time period in our schedule. It's a 30-minute kind of RTI block, sometimes we'll call it response to intervention, or IE, you might hear intervention and enrichment, or else WIN. We have all sorts of acronyms that we call it in different buildings. But really what it means is a 30-minute block of time where students are going to all sorts of different teachers. They might stay with their teacher or go to another classroom teacher or one of these interventionists or pathways person. So this 30-minute block, there isn't any new instruction. It's all kind of enrichment or intervention, kind of as the title says. But at 7-12, we identify these students for a special course that's a semester-long course, like reading, writing workshop at the middle and high school, or a math workshop. And that's in place of an elective. So it's the same principle, but kind of different execution based on the elementary and secondary. So the next slide outlines a little bit about where these positions would be. So we're asking for 1.0 FTE reading interventionist at Heritage. Heritage, due to kind of some growth, is really becoming quite a large elementary school. It is going to be as large, or maybe even one section larger than Prairie. But right now they only have 1.0 reading specialists, whereas both Prairie and Intermediate have 2 full-time people. So this staffing would really be in line with how we've staffed for other enrollment numbers. So that's why we're requesting the Heritage Reading Interventionist. Math intervention, we're asking for 1.5 for K-6. There would be 1.0 added to intermediate, which is the largest of the K-6 buildings. Prairie currently has 1.5, so we would want to bring Heritage up to 1.5 also. So again, these are based on enrollment numbers. One difference between the reading interventionist and the math interventionist is we do have the elementary math interventionists also teaching the accelerated class. So if the fourth grade students in Pathways who are eligible for 5th grade math, the math interventionist teaches that class too. Then for secondary English language arts support, we currently have 1.0 split between the middle school and high school. And this year, kind of even before COVID, our numbers were such that we really needed 1.0 at the middle school alone, but then still 0.5 at the high school. So we had to have our instructional coach teach some of those classes this year, which really isn't sustainable for that large of a building. So we would be adding 0.5. So between the middle school and high school, we would have 1.5 then. And that would be for reading, writing workshop classes. So just in terms of how we monitor the growth of the students and also just the, evaluating the system, we carefully monitor individual growth of students. So the interventionists themselves do often weekly progress monitoring, kind of quick checks to see how those students are doing. And again, accelerating them out if we can, and just making sure that we're always trying to move students up to grade level. And then we also, of course, analyze our school and district achievement overall. We bring the testing and assessment update to you all annually, which shows the number of students who are advanced, proficient, basic, and below basic. And then also we did a really large-scale, year-long analysis of our whole RTI process in 2017, 2018, then we brought that to the board in July of 2018. So these positions are really embedded in kind of how we program for kids and how we plan our instruction. And the requests for the interventionists, as I said, are really based on enrollment numbers and making it equal among the elementary schools. So I can stop there and see if there's any questions about interventionists before I talk briefly about the next item.
Does Arboretum have any support?
Arboretum has 1.0, yep. Arboretum is our smallest elementary school, and they we're pretty committed to keeping them at a 4-section school so they don't kind of have the growth that Heritage is experiencing right now.
Amy, when you talk about the RTI time, does that vary per grade? So like first grade might have it at 9 o'clock,
Yes.
and so the interventionist would have opportunities throughout. I mean, it isn't it varies during the day.
Right, yeah, absolutely. So that's part of the master schedule. They're all staggered so that interventionists can hit all of those grade levels. And when Prairie or Heritage is a larger building, like a 6-track school, sometimes the second grades will have 2 spots even, so that we can make sure that we serve all of those students. But yeah, it's staggered throughout the day.
Thank you.
Do we have any 0.5 FTEs right now that will go to 1 point?
Our current 0.5 is split with another 0.5, so that they are 1.0. All right, the next budget request that I wanted to speak a little bit to was the technology integration specialist. So currently we have 3 of these positions in our district, one at the intermediate school, one at the middle school, and one at the high school. And we've had these positions for a number of years. So prior to this year, obviously we had far less technology at the elementary level. We often would have like a Chromebook of carts that multiple classrooms would share, or maybe like a bank of 6 iPads that a classroom would share. And the LEMTech directors, really our librarians, included technology support in their role. But obviously now we are one-to-one with devices. So all of our K through 2 students have iPads and all of our 3 through 4 students have Chromebooks. So, there's an element of this that is just kind of managing devices and access and software, but also really working with staff to make sure that we're using this, to the optimal level and really providing support to them. So this is not a new budget request. Even before COVID, we were really interested in having someone to support elementary teachers in their integration of technology. But now, during the pandemic, that has really heightened our need for this, because not only do we have more technology now, teachers are using it a lot more in different ways. So we included a range of 1 to 3 FTE. So on the next slide, I'll outline a little bit about what these different scenarios could look like. So if we had 1 FTE, that would serve all 3 of our elementary schools, which is 1,400-ish students. And I have outlined there some of the benefits and the challenges. So one benefit would be, it would be great to get some staffing at this K-4 level. It would really be a good start for that. But of course, it will be a challenge for that one person to work across those 3 buildings. They wouldn't have any opportunities to work with students, as some of the integrators are able to at the upper grades. But they primarily be there to support staff in their use of technology. If we were able to fund 2.0, there could be other, multiple ways that we would divide that, but one way that we're proposing would be to have one of the positions really focus on primary, K through 2. There's specific devices, the iPads at those levels, and also kind of unique learners, the younger students. And then the other position could support 3rd and 4th grade teachers and students, and also support the Chromebooks. So that would allow the person to have kind of a smaller student and staff ratio than just the 1.0. But obviously they'd still be, scheduled across 3 buildings, and they would have those challenges still. And then the third scenario would be 1.0 for each elementary building, so, the 3 full-time positions. So this would be the most comparable position to what we have right now at the intermediate. The technology integrator at the intermediate does work directly with students, works in classrooms with teachers. One kind of future possibility would be they could be part of the 6-day rotation of like specials. So, right now our classroom teachers have prep time when the students are at art or bio or music or what have you. One of the positions that's in the 6-day rotation is counselors who provide kind of wellness and guidance instruction. So eventually we could move them out of part of the 6-day rotation. They would obviously have some, guidance that they would need to deliver to students. And then we could replace them with the technology integrators. That would not be something that we would be ready to implement next year, obviously, at this time. But that could be something that we could grow to. And then that meets kind of 2 purposes. One would be freeing up the counselors to do more kind of as-needed counseling or small group instruction, and then also providing technology instruction to every elementary student. So challenges for that, obviously, it's the most expensive proposal. We would need to coordinate those 3 positions, and then we'd need to start the planning for that 6-day rotation. So that's just a real brief overview on how we envision kind of the 1.0, 2.0, or 3.0 tech integrators scenarios. Mark?
What do you think the intermediate school reaction would be if they only had their tech recognition for 1/3 of the time they have now?
I know that they really value that position, and they've been able to do a lot, of student and classroom, activities with that position.
I mean, the creativity is phenomenal, what she is able to provide, not just the teachers, but in students doing their units. And that wouldn't happen anymore
Right.
on the scale that is being done right now, would it?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer the questions that the committee members had with regards to the intervention and the tech folks? Those were specific follow-ups from the committee wanting more clarification. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
And then back to the agenda item, at this point, we'd be happy to open up the first draft of the budget for any questions that any board members have or any comments that any budget committee members want to make to the other board members. We'd certainly be open to addressing any topics that you would like regarding the first draft of the budget.
And then you need a motion to approve the first draft, right?
Correct.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the first
I
draft?
see that I was somehow elevated to the vice president in that one, just taking the place of Mike, I believe. So. I think that could probably change.
There we go. There we go. But just a point of clarification with that motion, I mean, does that include the budget requests as part of that, Dave and Mark? And then as far as the integration specialist, what was your intent as far as the number of those? Just to be clear. The tech folks.
First draft have.
So the first draft had the inclusion of all the information that Steve had presented. And then I believe, I just want clarification if the additional budget requests were part of that motion. And then was that at the 3 tech folks, or I just want to make a clarification there.
Oh, it's not on page.
Or not the extra?
Or do you not want?
You just look at the first draft in
If you just want the first
in
draft of the budget,
isolation.
then you can do the other budget requests separate.
I was just doing the first draft in my.
Well, let's do
Yeah,
that, then
let's
you
do
can come
that.
back to the budget request.
So we have
Thank
a
you.
first and a second. So any questions on the first draft of the budget?
So just to clarify, this is just the first draft of the budget, not the additional budget
No
requests.
additional.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
Now we will deal with the
I
slide
move
13.
we accept the additional request in total. That'd be with 3 techs for each of the elementary building
Yeah, why don't you open that?
integrators and the translator.
Yep.
Each of the bullets identified there.
So the
in
whole
full.
list
The whole
with
list in full.
3 the integration specialist, year 3.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept the whole thing fully.
Second.
Comments, questions? All in
Steve?
favor?
Could I ask Steve a question?
Sure.
When you look at slide 13, what funding resource would you see covering that?
Yeah,
Where
sure,
would that
great
come
question,
from
Dave. There's
different?
a variety of options that we're going to be working through with the budget committee as we put together the second and third drafts of the budget. As an example, there's what's called ESSER 2 federal funds available to the district, which provides the base allocation and then funding based on in-person hours this year. There's what's called ESSER 3, which the district is still waiting for information on, which is additional federal funding that is significantly more than what we're going to be receiving under ESSER 2. There's also the discussion on the operational referendum funds and the way to utilize those operational referendum funds to deal with continuing COVID-related expenditures. So there's options for the budget committee to look at and that's going to be one of the main topics as we move forward over the next couple of months, is really looking at those resources and lining them up with the expenditures that we think are appropriate moving forward into next year's budget.
But those are all one-time revenues, and there's only 2 items on 13 that I think are one-time costs.
Exactly, and we did spend time talking about that at the committee level because there is a definite situation that we have right now between one-time funding sources, which is the referendum to exceed the cap, which is for a 5-year period of time, ESSER 2 funds, ESSER 3 funds, and the ongoing costs of the positions that you see identified on this page. And that is a topic that the committee discussed and will continue to discuss as we determine what is the most appropriate, let's say, source of funding for these positions. And as an example, with some of the federal funds, we are required to spend the funds on student intervention support for those who need support because of the COVID school closures. So this is a situation that many districts are going to be faced with when you do have these federal funds coming in on a one-time basis, but do have an obligation to spend those funds in a similar manner to what you're seeing in front of you on the slide tonight. So it is a topic that we are still working through with the Budget Committee and will continue to for the next couple of months.
And one of these are not LTE positions, they're full-time positions. So after ESSER runs out, after the referendum funding runs out, you're gonna have to look in the budget to say, where does this 430, or just shy of $430,000 come from? What are you gonna give up?
Actually, I think that 430 is based on the tech integration being 66,000.
That's,
Once you bumped it to 198, that just became 570,000.
no, I think you're right, Dave.
Yep.
Yeah, but
So that's $500,000 on a, well, there's 100,000 of it that is not permanent expense, it's one time. But you're basically looking at 470,000 permanent expense that you've got to come up with somewhere.
yeah,
One
and
thing
I
I'd like
think-
to remind the board, when we were looking at a facilities referendum, we were looking at an operational referendum as well that included program development, not just support of the new buildings. And some of this could be part of that option as well.
Well, it's gonna have to be part of that, because you don't have $500,000 that you can just throw at, these positions.
Right now, I think what we have to take a look at, and part of it goes back to what Steve said, is some of the goals we set as a board, and also some of the ESSER money is targeted at post-pandemic and at looking at intervention. Now, all of these positions have been on our budget request, even pre-COVID, as identifications of areas where we need different ways to support kids. To Dave and Jack's point, they're right. I mean, our dollars, as you see in the first draft of the budget, are generally expended through our ongoing costs and just addressing returning staff next year. So then, as we look at these positions, Steve and I have talked, we pretty much have like 4 years of funding in different levels that are going to float through and timelines of when we can utilize it before a point in time has to be, as Jack and Dave point out, where we have to determine what our continual funding model is for these. So part of that is going to be, can be obviously decisions you make on an annual basis as far as how you move towards that. The second piece is you look at additional revenue sources and you determine if at that point this is still not an area that's fully funded, how do you fund it? We have to make some decisions with regards to it. So that's definitely a piece that I think we were pretty open with the budget committee, is that these are additional funds based on the one-time basis over a 4-year period, of which we then have to have a plan of how we sustain them beyond that.
I'm going to vote against this motion, not because I'm against any of these positions. I'm actually for all of them. But I want to keep them separate for now, so that as we go through the budget process, and we see the ESSER money, we see the state budget finalization, then we can pick, if we have to, which of these can be permanently supported and moved in. And then we can identify the ones that we're going to say, maybe we only run them for 4 years, or we at least say we're going to run them for 4 years. And then if the referendum deals with it, fine. If, or if the state budget deals with it, even better. But I want them in the final budget. I just don't want to commit to them now, because then we start looking at a larger list of items and you're trying to pick which ones to do. These are the ones I'd rather have off to the side and say, we're going to do them as we see the budget develop to pay for
And I
it.
guess what I would add to that, Dave, is when we've looked at approval of these items, given the market of hiring people for these, they need to hit the market now. So an approval tonight on any of these items that you would move forward, we would get posted and get moving as soon as we could to get people lined up for next year. So if there are any items that you're feeling like you need to hold on, those are things we're going to have to know, because we're going to get an approval of these items tonight means that we start moving, we get them posted in the next number of days, and we're hopefully bringing recommendations to you in the next month.
So what's the toughest position to fill up there? The interventionist? The psychologist?
Honestly, Jack, they all have their challenge. Looking at Brian and Beck, these are all challenging ones to fill. Some of them have some additional licensure to them. School psychs are hard to find in the best environments. Finding quality interventionists are usually people that they're not new out of school, they're experienced folks that are coming in. There's potential we may have some folks internally that may shift into some of these pieces. The tech integrationists are certainly people with specified skills. So those are generally folks that I would see probably coming out of some level of a teaching position that have developed those skills through their work, similar to the folks that we have in line right now. So I think all of these are ones that require us to hit the market aggressively in order to recruit the best people. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's just the market we're in right now. And these are also the areas everybody else is hiring, because as Steve said, this is where the ESSER money is going, and it's specifically meant for intervention and supports.
I would make the motion to get the interventionist, move forward with the interventionist.
Did we already have?
We already have a motion in a
Motion
second.
on it.
Yeah, we got a motion.
We do?
Yeah.
Yeah. The motion is to move forward with the entire list, including the three elementary tech integration specialists.
Joan, I'd like to just point out too that both bullet number 3 and 4 in the second column, on their own, they look like standalone items. I mean, we can see what those two positions do, but they also address the mental health piece, because bullet 3 releases high school counselors to actually counsel students versus oversee testing. And bullet 4 would free the elementary counselors in each school to a certain degree to do more student counseling. So it's just not you're bringing an intervention. Now, that wouldn't happen this year, as Amy said, but the year after it would. And so you're not just addressing those specific needs, you're also addressing the mental health needs, which we have spoken about throughout the whole year. And I think it's important to emphasize that point.
There's definitely some axillary type impacts of these. When you start to look at the school psych and 504 coordinator, on the budget request, that was 2 requests. We combined it because we initially had a 504 coordinator, which would have been one level of credential, and a school psych at another. As Kurt and I met on this, we felt we could combine those, hire it as a school psych, because any of their additional time outside of coordinating 504s could be allocated towards student mental health. As Mark said, the high school testing and online support right now resides with our counselors and with Michelle McGlynn. And by pulling those out, it'll provide better support. So we tried to find those items that best aligned with kind of that vision of intervention, and then mental health supports kind of going forward. The one difference up there that is the tech piece And that's really been, I think, grown out of the, I think you probably heard it from staff, of the need for support at the elementary level, similarly to the others. So it's hard to kind of, if you have to kind of differentiate, they all have an impact at those levels based on some of the priorities we set.
Do we know an anticipated amount of savings that we might, or extra in salaries due to retirements that we may have?
All right, I'm looking at Brian in the back. I mean, that's still something that's in process.
Yeah, I have not calculated.
How many retirements are we?
I shouldn't have to look there.
Around 10, no, that's not.
Why'd you look at me? Well, I look at you because I'm only, you knew everybody retired.
I'm only one. 21, well, there we go.
Yeah.
21.
Yeah, there's
We have
definitely.
21 retirements?
Yes.
But that would be, but that's classified staff also
As well.
right?
Yeah, that's not
If you look at
certified.
I gotta say, Randy, you sold me on the difficulty of hiring. We all know how bad
Yeah.
that is right now. But I'm also gonna sit here and say that as we do this, when we start talking about the referendum, we have to be serious that we're creating a mandate for many, many, many years. And in 3-4 years, I don't wanna be sitting here saying, well, now what do we do? We create a $500,000 hole. So I'm gonna vote for it, and I can tell I for one will be pushing hard that the referendum deals with this, otherwise we're gonna have another problem.
Yeah.
I call the question.
Second.
Second. So we're just going to vote on calling the question. All in favor?
Aye.
So now we're back to the motion, which is the whole list, including 3 interventionists. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Joan? Oh, we have a guest in here that is sitting through all this that might have to present. And do you have a guest to present tonight?
Yes.
That's sitting through all this. Can we making a motion to move him up so he doesn't have to sit?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, we have
Randy?
Nathan is here tonight. So
Can we do that
Hi.
at this point? I don't know.
That would
Judy
be fair.
completely covered him. I didn't even see him.
Is that appropriate at this point? I don't think he wants to sit here for.
We have
Another 2
just
hours.
2 quick items on the
Okay.
budget. Let's finish budget and then can we move?
Yes.
Do we
Okay,
need
let's
a
just
motion
finish
for
up
that
budget.
or not? Technically, do you need the
All right, I
motion?
didn't think about it really.
Do we need a motion to do that?
We can just do it. and then
Okay.
we'll just-
Okay, but let's finish up the 2 last items on budget, student fees and facility fees.
Okay, thank you, Joan. The Budget Committee is recommending moving forward with a 10-cent increase in the lunch costs next year with the goal of working to rebuild our fund balance within our food service fund, which is Fund 50. So you do see that in the attachment in yellow, as well as the Budget Committee recommended moving forward with the facility use fees and adding the soccer stadium to the same line as the Warrior Stadium for facility use. And then the only other remaining thing, Joan, under
Oh,
the
yeah.
Budget Committee is the committee's recommending paying the Rip Park tennis courts loan that we had with the Village of Waunakee from a couple of years ago to make the final payment. We did have a 5-year payment plan that we had set up with the village, but the board has expressed an interest in paying that off sooner if possible. So you do see that under item D5 as well from the committee. So those are the remaining items that the committee has moved forward for consideration tonight.
If I can just clarify, Mark's asked a question a couple times and we just have to correct a piece. Under the facilities fees, we do have Warrior Stadium and the new soccer stadium are the same. And then also on the identification of the group classifications, and that's where I found the error, Mark, is it should be that the soccer stadium is pulled out of the classification 1 and it's a standalone item by itself. So I clarified that with Aaron this afternoon. So that'll be a piece that, as you read through that, it just treats both the soccer stadium and Warrior Stadium the same, and we have to clean up the one piece in the document.
On the document, it listed at $100 across the board, and that's not what it's going to be. is going to
It's
be priced the same
$100
as.
an hour, I believe.
But, well, if you look at it, football is 300, 400, 500. And soccer's listed as 100, 100, 100. And I guess I don't see how that's treated as
I'm
the
trying to
same.
see where,
And so my understanding is soccer would be treated exactly like football for a
that's
fee.
absolutely right, correct.
So can we make one motion on all three of these?
Yes, you could.
So I'd make a motion to approve these three items with the correction of the soccer stadium to be similar to the football stadium.
Second.
Mark? Did Mark second?
Or if someone tells me they can have it.
Mark?
I think there was like three of them.
Dave?
Give it to Brian.
Dave, I didn't say anything.
Oh,
Okay, Jack and Brian. Any other questions, concerns, are we ready to vote?
I do have one question, Steve. On the consideration of student fees, I saw, it's just basically that 10-cent increase on lunch. After having seen high school and middle school lunches for a couple days, a lot of it is a la carte items. Do we do anything about monitoring the prices of those? Or does Taylor just set them as they do?
We do have communication with them regularly about the fees that they charge, with, of course, making sure that the goals of whatever is approved as the budget for the school board, that we work towards maintaining that goal, and we'll adjust the a la carte fees as we need to, just depending on the student interest. But yes, we do have conversations with them about those topics and really meeting the request of the budgets that are brought forward for approval by the school board.
Yeah, I just would hate to see, we're kind of doing smaller increases in lunch and seeing the a la carte jump crazy, I think would be kind of rough on some people, so.
Right.
As long as they're roughly tracking, that's fine.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor of all three of those items?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So we will stop here with committee and jump down to
12A3.
12A3.
All right,
We have
so,
Annie.
yeah,
Sorry, I am so sorry. I really didn't see a
yeah, so it's my pleasure. Well, I think most of you have all met Annie. She's been doing a phenomenal job for us as our communications specialist this year. And one of the things that we were hoping to do when we started off with this position was start off with really a plan for engagement and communications. But from the very moment that Annie stepped in the door, we have put her to work really managing, helping us to pull together all the communication around things we're doing this year that were of highest priority. So as the board has set out that we need to have a communications plan as part of what we're doing moving forward, and this was part of the goals that we've set with Annie as well. She's here tonight to really talk about that aspect of it, in addition to kind of the dovetailing into really a branding process and bringing to us our visitor this evening, who she'll introduce in a few minutes, to talk about what that could look like in a proposal that he has put forth to us. So Annie, all yours.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you for moving me up just a little bit so I can introduce our guest. I am going to share 3 large projects that I've been working on. That's the communications audit, communications plan, and then our district, a proposal for a district rebranding or branding project for our school district. So this past year, we really learned that clear, concise, and timely communication to all of our stakeholders was really key and very important this past year. So we've learned a lot. We do a lot of things really well in our district, but we also know we have many areas for improvement. So through research and evaluations, this audit has really been taking place, and we've looked at different aspects this entire year through this past year of COVID, but a couple additional tools that I would like to do within the next kind of 6 to 8 weeks as part of this audit is focus groups and surveys to both our internal and external stakeholder groups. So really taking a look at who we send our messages to, when we send those messages, and how, like what tools we use to send those messages or communications to. Once the audit is complete, a comprehensive communications plan will be developed. I have kind of a basic outline of what this looks like. However, obviously it will change just a little bit with our findings within our focus groups and our surveys, so we'll adjust that as needed. A big piece of our communications plan is our visual representation of what our district looks like. So within that, then the tools that our staff, we use to communicate with our stakeholders. So for example, email signatures or our PowerPoint presentation, tools that we use to showcase and share with our stakeholders. So that kind of brings us to our third of our branding process that we are proposing your approval tonight to start this process. And I wanted to share just a brief kind of back history of how we got to where we are tonight to introduce you to our guest, Nathan Chow. So since I started in July, Randy and I have had many conversations on how this rebranding may look for our district. And so I started in the winter and I contacted local businesses just to see how they could support us in this project. And what I really found is they were not interested in helping us kind of with the plan or the design, kind of the back history to get us to where we needed to go. They were more interested in, we will help print your items for you, but we're not sure we're able to do the actual design and the comprehensive branding of your entire school district. So then after I talked with local businesses, I then reached out to several school districts who have rebranded in the last 4 or 5 years. I say rebranded, some are just branding and some are rebranding, which is taking what they already have but kind of, improving it. And that led me to Nathan, and in just a moment I'll introduce and invite him up here to share with you, but I spent many conversations on the phone with him and was very impressed. So Randy and I invited him to come here probably about a month ago, and we spent about an hour just really learning ourselves on what this could look like for our school district, or what Nathan has led other school districts through this process, and then kind of how to make it work for our school district as well. So great pleasure to introduce you to Nathan Chow. He will have a short presentation for you, and then at the end we'll take questions if you have additional questions as well.
Hello, and thank you for having me here to kind of help you, guide you, and talk through this. And I'm going to admit right away that my joke of always behind the scenes is now gone, because I was sitting over to the side behind the scenes. So I'd like to introduce myself real quick. My name is Nathan Chow, and I'm actually a trained graphic designer. I have a BFA in graphic design, and been in the field for 20 plus years, working with Fortune 500 companies, all the way down to the mom and pop shops. And in the last 10 years, I went out and started a freelance contract business, which I call Foundry. And I found a niche working with school districts. Currently, I'm working with about 18 other school districts throughout the state of Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa, all through the word of mouth, because school districts have very small ponds, as you can see. So basically, I'm here to help talk about the importance of branding. and why it's so important for school districts, and kind of guide you through that visual realization and need for it. And this has really been a popular conversation because it is, especially with COVID, has been in the forefront of a lot of school districts on how to communicate to your stakeholders. The thing is with branding, there's a lot to it. Okay, branding can, if you don't mind going back one slide, thank you. Branding, there's a lot to it. There's both the voice, who you're talking to, how you're representing, but mostly what I'm saying here tonight is about visual branding. And everything is about telling a story, showing your representation, who you are, inside and out, who do you need to talk to, how do you talk to them, and that's both internal and external customers. The other thing is also the importance of of branding and visual branding is being consistent. The reason why there's such an important factor of being consistent is, and a perfect example is, think of Target, your business Target. Look at how much they invest into their image and how they're talking to their customer. But they only stay focused on one logo. And they only use that one logo both in red, white, and black, nothing else. But if you actually change that Target logo into a blue, it promotes a confusion to their stakeholders, their customers, and it looks like Walmart. What if their uniforms were blue? Then you're thinking of Best Buy. So those are the importance of branding, and that school districts are starting to really see that value to help them communicate these messages to show that they are a business of teaching school or learning to communicating with students. And that, your budget. I mean, let's talk about budgets. I'm just going to throw a number out there, $50 million budget, you're looked at a $50 million entity. So you should act and respond to that at that level. And with that being said, what happens is when you're that consistent, people start to bring trust to you. People start to see you being, it's a more of a comfortable feel. You guys are in the weeds, you're listening to your conversation, you are in it every day. You see it every day. You live it, you experience it. But I am an outsider, and I don't know anything about you. And one of the things why I'm saying that, and why it's important, is that you're talking about open enrollment. People need to learn who you are, and open enrollment is very important to your budget, and it's something that I did here earlier. So what I'm showing you is 3 districts that I currently have worked with in the past. Each has a story, and there's a reason why. They might not be your story, but it was their story, and that allowed them to come to these conclusions. And that's something I would do with you, and to work with you, is to come to that representation and how to move it forward and how to keep it consistent. So that the district will be here 20 years, 30 years, 50 years. We're hoping that the logo will stay the same because you want it to be timeless and you want it to anchor that in that field. So thank you for to the next slide. Branding goes through a huge process. It's just not a wave of a magic wand and I created a logo for you. I learn who you are. I work with people. I'm the guy is basically the tool that creates the actual image and the structure, the backstory. But I work with the representatives who are your experts, your voices. It could be a board member, it could be a student, it could be a taxpayer, a resident. But we will set that up once we understand what is needed. Every school district by far has different needs. Racine Unified was a completely different beast compared to the Kelvin School District. and also compared to Franklin School District. So this is kind of like a general timeline of how I set this up to help walk you through. And it's based on a lot of my experiences working in the ad agencies and the publishing firm and dealing with branding. And really, I wanted to pare it down, not pare it down so that, you know, you cut a corner here or there, but it's also about understanding what school budgets are. And that the need for schools to have this type of visual representation and consistency, that I can offer this to districts. It's pretty straightforward. You know, it's getting the engagement of the district, it's learning the district, and it goes into the research and development. It kind of works its way down, finding, you know, and working across, and then coming up with a plan and rolling it out. And things I'll work with the team is when to roll it out and when not to roll it out, or what direction. And this is also about the district. What could happen is it could open up to other things, to the high school, to the middle school, maybe to the elementaries, or if I heard correctly, maybe to your future virtual learning school. You know, this is something that is needed to talk about because you want to have an identifier for your public to understand what you're talking about and who you're talking, you know, about with. And then I go through some focus groups, and that depends on really the need. That I like to call it the laundry list of what is needed for the district, and then kind of come up with that plan on moving forward. Let's see. Kind of covered it with a really fast 15-minute speech. Like I said, branding is a highly developed situation where what we can move forward with, but I'll be happy to answer questions.
So what's your timeline on this? So you sign, let's say we agree to this today, when do we have this work in place?
So timelines can vary depending on how much you want me involved. If it's just the district logo, if we're talking about updating the, let's say the high school logo or mascot, or dealing with like, perfect example would be like, I've worked with one school district, they had all their mascots done, but none of the technical files correct. So I had to rebuild them all for them. So that's like a production side of things. So if we're talking about, like if you want to launch, like say the district logo, you would want to launch it in the beginning of a school year. You don't want to launch it in the middle of a school year. You don't want to launch it. And to be really honest, you want it to be completed by midsummer so that you can start implementing it and rolling it out. So I work backwards. So let's say for next school year, let's finish it by June. We work backwards and it's about 3 to 6 months. You know, a full-on work, but throughout the year is probably what will come down to. I would have to look into a little closer, finite detail on that answer.
What we had talked about, Jack, was in person with the guidance that Nathan shared with us was the launching it at the beginning of a school year where you weren't trying to do it midstream where there was confusion. It was kind of an event where you were launching so backing it up from there, looking at this as a piece that we work at between now and through next school year. The piece that I thought was important in our discussion with Nathan, and I wanted to make sure was included in his proposal, was the inclusion of focus groups to really get a sense of what our community and different stakeholder groups are valuing and who we are. We've also talked about it from a perspective, at least during our meeting, and this would be a piece that we would vet out throughout this, is consistency not only of like the institutional logo that represents like the Waunakee Community School District, but also what is the logo that we would then move forward with as we represent ourselves in all of our co-curriculars, et cetera. Because we don't have consistency on any of those right now, and trying to really build kind of that aspect as we move forward. So that's part of at least the initial conversations we've had and the vision that we would have, that we would put forward.
So, yeah, and I'd like to just quickly add to that too. Yes, focus groups are very important, or just even like bringing a team that help dedicate to make the decision for a logo, is because it becomes a team effort. It's not me, just this random guy coming in here and says, here's your logo, have fun with it. What it is it's because I'm learning who you are. You guys are those experts. You're the ones that live through it. I just need to hear that information so I can best represent you as a community school. The other thing is the coming up with that conversation of how to move forward with it and how you want to talk about it as well to the next step, to the next level, to the people, your internal and external customers. The other one more thing is focus groups also help generate how other people see you. You know, you're going to hear about things that people don't like and how they see you that you didn't see that angle. Those are the things I'll hear that can help generate a new idea and help put you in a path that could complement what is currently going on. And then one more thing is there could be a tough discussion coming up. That's something that could be needed to be addressed. And that's how we can open that conversation up to help move that forward as well. So what happens is that it almost kind of, I wouldn't say with schools and school budgets, because you're not a Walmart and you have a $1.5 million budget to flip a logo in 20 days, and that's what they did. You don't have that. What you have is school funding that you need to apply a lot of in different places. And I'm talking the logo, think of where it is. I mean, it's on the side of a truck, it's on your check stubs, it's on your website, it's on your business cards. And then how and when to do that. So there will be a continual support on the back end as well. Okay?
Yeah, so what we've put, as you saw in the previous slide, we had basically around $30,000 set aside. I think what Nathan has proposed to us is in your packet is $18,000. That's really for his services, the development of pieces, the running of some of the focus groups. And then the additional dollars that we have set would be as a piece that Annie started to vet out, is starting to look at least the first iteration of things like letterhead and some of those pieces that we would then start to move forward with. Now, obviously, as you start to do other pieces, that's a piece we have to talk about that would have other funding in the future. But we've also looked at this as a continual relationship moving forward, as a piece as we continue to walk through. It's not just the kind of the completion of a logo, but also then a fuller relationship moving forward to make sure that we are doing those things as we put together our website reconfiguration at a point in the future, our social media, all of those aspects tie into this. So the dollars are the initial funds to really get us moving, to get us to that point where we can then launch, and then additional funds set aside to start the pieces that Annie has costed out. The $30,000 is coming from, actually, the board and I share a budget, so this is actually carryover from our budget is where it's coming from.
So if you look at this, this is an ongoing process, so is this like an annual contract of $18,000 a year?
No.
Is that the anticipation here?
Go ahead, Nathan.
I'm sorry. This is the initial, with one of our conversations, Annie and Randy asked me to come up with what is typical in a situation like this. And the thing is it's hard for me to answer that for you right now because I work with a school district that has only 900 students. And then I work with Racine Unified School District who has over 20,000 students and a different type of capacity and need. So I need to learn exactly that to-do list, and what happens is it kind of comes into a spectrum in that realm of a retainer, and then what we need to do is how many deliverables I can accomplish within that time frame, and to set you on the straight course. It actually kind of does reduce in cost depending on the need at the end, or it can even go up in some instances because branding and visual communication and any type of communication, it just ramps up. And if you think about it from a COVID standpoint, you needed it more this year because of the need of like precise communication. So I'm talking that it could turn into a newsletter. It could turn into talking about referendum in the future, operational or facility. It's one of those things where I even know how to mail to the general public and be cost effective for you as a district instead of going to, let's say your local parent and they say, oh, we'll just do a bulk. Well, that's not the appropriate way to touch every single mailbox that's currently in your community. And there is a cheaper way of doing it. It's just knowing the right avenues.
The ongoing relationship, Jack, I see is after you get past the initial body of work, it's then looking at some of those additional needs that you have. So as we redo the website, and we need to make sure that we have the right banner that's out there, that's a piece we may piece off to Nathan to do some of that work. As we're going to referendum, we worked with third parties during the last referendum to actually do things with our website and with some of our flyers. It would be something where we'd have some of those pieces more tied to relationships that we've created as opposed to somebody else trying to bring in that service to us. So I think the initial piece that we're looking at is the proposal in front of you, but also realizing as we go forward, there may be other things we may want to pull Nathan into to help us with, and then there would also be pieces that additional, the other costs are associated with just the changeover of the immediate pieces and then other items over time.
And during this development, that new things will appear because time changes and things change and needs change. So there has to be some kind of flexibility to address. And that's one of the reasons why the retainer for sure. And to be honest, I have multiple school districts that I have this relationship with, stemming for almost 10 years now. And in one district, it took almost 5 years to fully implement just because they don't have the $1.5 million budget. But what my goal is for you to be generating the information the same and so that the response is greater by far. That helps.
Do we own the logo and stuff when you're done?
Yes.
Okay.
You can trademark it depending on the process if you want to go through that, and especially when it comes to mascots. When we go through that whole development of that, what's the difference between a logo and a mascot? So yes, there's those opportunities as well, but I don't own anything. Everything will be in your.
Randy and we initially talked about creating like a core committee, so a core branding committee, and then Nathan, so that would be around, we thought maybe 7 to 8 individuals. So that's different than the actual focus groups, but then Nathan would help guide this group as we move forward through this process. And that would include, Randy and I were just briefly talking, but somebody in the community, maybe a business leader, staff, parent, student voice, board member, Randy and I, and then one administrator.
And then looking at how we could then break out some of the focus group pieces to get broader perspectives that can come back. And then obviously the school board would be part of that and then be kept up to date throughout the whole process.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you want a vote on this?
I would like, if the board is willing, I'd like consideration of the proposal in front of you.
Does anybody make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve, move forward.
Second.
Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. I appreciate the
Sorry
time
for
and
missing you back
I
there.
appreciate the up in the.
Stay joyful.
We'll look forward, Nathan, to working with you very soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great evening.
You too.
All right, so we will go back to facility committee.
So the facilities committee has several items up for consideration. Basically, we met on May 3rd, and the first thing we looked at was the Fund 41 capital project list. Basically, it does need a motion. Most of it was changing, the bottom line stayed the same, but a lot of it had to do with just changing the dollar values on certain items based on what they were projected and what they came in at.
Rebecca, can you open it up, please?
Yeah.
The one thing was there was a drop in doing some parking lot repairs due to the fact that it looks like it's going to be a bigger parking lot thing out here for Bethel later anyway. And then some of that money was moved into some of the other ones. But you see most of it is just like some changes for some things went up a little bit. Kitchen equipment went down a little bit. But the total fund balance, the total fund amount was the same.
Hey Dave, on line 8, do we have a verbal quote on the generators from 25 to, we're waiting on a formal quote, but do we have a verbal that 75,000?
He had that in the list. I don't know if you had, that was just verbal, I thought. I didn't see a document for it.
The document came, we have an official document that came in after the facility committee. It's very, very close to this amount, yes.
So I would make a motion to approve the Fund 41 capital project list.
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
The second one was the energy conservation projects. As some of you know from in the past, we've always put money into energy conservation. I believe a big part of it was once we paid off Bethel, we decided that money should go towards that on a regular basis. And so it's mainly a continuation of the high school. A lot of the relighting in the hallways and stuff are always a major target due to their return on investment is fairly quick with those. So this was the 21-22 project list.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any comments, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mark?
Before we go forward, Rebecca, could I ask that when we show these slides, you show them at least at 125? When I was watching the facility meeting, I couldn't read a single one of them. And we're showing them not just for us, but for the people at home. So I think it would be appreciated by those who are zooming in. Thank you.
Okay.
The next item is basically John had Hilliard, which is a company, do a cleaning cost analysis for us, which was basically looking at how much staffing do we really need to do the type of cleaning that we do. And once you get in there, you're going to see at the bottom row is obviously the most important. Basically, they said without using more modern equipment, which has to do with mainly changing the types of vacuums and stuff we use to be more mobile, they said we needed 43.7 people. And currently we have, was it 35?
25.
27.
27. I can't even read that number on the bottom anymore. And basically they said we needed an additional 2.8 and our current open positions are 7.5, so we need about 10 people, even with the update of equipment, in order to get to the cleaning that they say our policies and procedures are supposed to put us at. Is that about correct?
That's correct, thank you.
So the committee then moved on to the next item, which was consideration of upgrading our cleaning equipment so that we could save a lot of positions just by doing that part of it. And so the recommendation by the committee was to approve the purchase of the equipment, which you'll see is mainly the cleaning equipment on this list. So you see the R&R cleaning with VAC at the district level. You see them at Arboretum, Heritage, and all the way down through till you get to the washing machines, I believe.
Right.
That, all that equipment through there is what was being recommended.
This spreadsheet was really representative of referendum funds moving forward and the projections for those. Embedded within here is the equipment. And so what the committee approved was moving forward with the equipment aspects that Dave just was explaining as far as how they can build in the efficiencies.
And I believe it was around a grand total of 50, 70, it was around $86,000, but all of this could come out of the COVID operational referendum.
So the equipment looked more than reasonable to me. But as I look at this list, I really have a serious concern about touchless faucets in our schools.
That's not part of this
That's
motion.
not part of that.
That's not?
What we talked
That's a
about
whole
was
separate
just
issue.
basically buying the Hilliard equipment so that it.
Right, but so is that the only thing, are we talking about the whole list, or are we just
No, we're
talking
just
about
talking
the?
about the Hilliard equipment.
You're
We had
just
the
talking
same-
about these items here.
We had the same discussion.
Plus the 16 machines up on the
So
district.
from this
floor.
list, you're only moving forward the energy equipment at this time?
The cleaning equipment. the
Cleaning
Hilliard
equipment,
cleaning
right. We're just
equipment
moving the
that,
clean, yeah, the other items like the faucets, I mean, that's not, this is just an earmark of a picture of referendum
Got it,
dollars. The
okay.
only piece that's moving forward is the equipment that was presented by Hilliard. So it starts up on like the fourth line down with the vacuums, and then on the bottom areas with the different levels of the floor mop, the vacuums, the vacuum batteries, the
Got it.
extractors, so it doesn't include any of those other pieces.
Right, so if you look at the touchless faucets, ignore that, start below it and go all the way down until you hit the
Yep.
last two lines of the washing machines. It's the stuff in between there, and then the two lines that say RR cleaning, vac, and shop.
I move we accept that proposal.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
The next item up for consideration was about how to deal with the supposed 10 more positions that we needed. And there was a proposal to hire, which you'll see the clean mark, to basically provide those 10 people for a time frame of 6 months. And so basically we would be contracting janitors for the schools, mainly, I think it was at the high school. And the motion to recommend was 2-1.
Would we put a hold on hiring those 7 to 10? We'd still hire them as we did.
What
Well,
the,
I think one of the things that we can do is if we get these clean tech guys, or clean chem, or whatever the company is, and we find a good employee, we can actually buy that person out of their contract.
Yeah.
We can also get rid of the contract in 30 days. So if we do find somebody outside of these people, I believe, we can, get rid of the contract in 30 days and hire that person. So there's some flexibility. I think the beauty of this right now is we've had 7 positions open, right? And we haven't been able to fill them. We're to the point where we need some support. So this gets us some support, and the reason we put 6 months in there is to allow us to hire, internal folks.
Mark?
My problem with this proposal is we're hiring a company, paying them $22.50 an hour, when we advertised the position at $15.31 an hour. And I'm not surprised we don't get a lot of people when the neighboring schools are paying $16 to $17 an hour. And I find a hard time looking at our custodial staff, say this is what we're doing. And from per discussion at the committee, it sounds like the actual wage for the worker is $8.50 an hour.
We don't know that.
Well, that's what I heard from the advisor, and at least that's what I thought I heard. And if that's the case, what are you getting at $8.50 an hour? They also advise that we hire a full-time supervisor to make sure that they're doing the job right. I'd rather invest that money in our custodial staff, and I do believe HR has a proposal that's raising the per hour. I just can't look at our employees and say we're going to do this and go out and, you know, I think we should invest in our own people.
I
Even for
agree.
6 months.
I was the one that voted against it, and I don't disagree with the need for the people. I disagree with the principle of hiring a third party to come in and do the same job our own people are doing, where they're paying the people who are doing it significantly less than what our people are making, and we're paying the company significantly more than we're paying our people. That's just a horrible message. I understand we need the help. I think we need to push harder to hire people, but hiring a third party to come in when we're being told we're going to have to supervise them more than our own people, and then having them work right next to our people is a horrible message. And then when you say about we could then hire some of those people, after we pay another big hunk of money to Clean Mark in order to hire the person, it requires us to pay them 2 months of salary in order to hire that person away.
3 months.
3 months? Sorry. It's cool. Okay, so 50% worse than I thought. So I just think that's terrible. We're doing all the bonusing to a company while taking advantage of the people working under them and telling our own people they're worth less than we're willing to pay a private company. I think we get through the time we got to get through, we get the equipment, and we push and raise our wage and hire people. If Clean Mark can hire them for $8 to $12 an hour, is the number I heard, we can hire them for 17 to 18.
What does that do to the existing custodians? Bumps theirs as well?
What was the second part of your question?
It bumps theirs as well? I mean, if you're gonna, is that how that kind of works?
Yeah, the recommendation that you have, that you'll see in a few minutes from the HR committee, is that our custodial crews will be getting their percentage increase, plus on top of that, I believe, Brian, $1 an hour. So we're starting to move forward with that. That goes into effect July 1st. So for our existing employees and for new folks entering our system, we're working towards increasing what their pay is to address the hiring issue and also addressing it for the market. So that's what you'll see in just a few minutes to the HR committee. The piece that we have is we still have the need for additional assistance to try to maintain the buildings that we have. So that's the issue for why this came forward as kind of a stopgap measure until we could get that pay increase in place and until we could continue to recruit employees. The other piece that we shared was that I think the proposal was up to 9 people or for 6 months, and I think what we've looked at was that this is, as we hired folks to come on to us as a school district, that we would reduce that contract out. So that was the concept that came out of this per the committee's recommendation.
That's correct. And, you know, right now we're short-staffed at the high school.
Yeah, that's correct. We're less than half of our normal staff right now at the high school. In fact, people are on leave tonight and called in, and we're very, very short-staffed at the high school.
John, when could this group start?
I have been in conversation with the Clean Mark Company in order to revise some of the language in the contract. They would start recruiting as soon as they get a signed contract back. I don't have a time frame for the the date that they could actually deliver the human resource.
Is this somebody you've worked with before, Jim?
I have not actually worked with Clean Mart before.
Who are their current clients, you know?
I'd have to get that list for you. I don't have that off the top of my head.
So if we go with the contract, who hires the supervisor? Us or them?
And I think, Mark, that was a comment from the Hilliard folks, that wasn't from the Clean Mart people. So what you heard is that was from the Clean Mart folks that was from the Hilliard representatives that were here, that were just talking about from their experiences. I mean, certainly we've got to talk through kind of how we do supervise them. But I mean, we've had a custodial supervisor on our list as well as a piece that we've been looking at for the future. It's not a piece that was on our budget request in front of you tonight, but it's definitely been a piece that I know John's been working with Steve on over the last number of months.
Is the 6 month, is what they're requesting? Is that their shortest period, or can
No,
we
we can do month by month.
That was just a
Days.
number that was thrown out by the committee, Brian, that as kind of a, looking at where we're sitting here in May, pay increases that come into effect that Brian Grabarski will present in a bit will go in effect July 1st, and then just trying to bridge that time frame for then recruitment. So that was the concept behind it.
We're still going to be actively looking for hiring.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion to?
I make a motion to move forward with this contract as a stopgap.
I second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
4-3.
Hands?
Yeah, let's go around. Judy?
Actually, if you're going to do a roll call, you need to do it alphabetically, and I have the list in your folder.
Oh, sorry. Yep. David?
No.
Judy?
Yes.
Joan? No? Ted?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
And Brian?
No. Am I always going to be last?
On the list.
So what was our
And you're
outcome
only
there?
an H. That doesn't seem right.
I guess my thing is, it'd be easier if it was 3 months, get us through the summer and give us
Well,
some
you can
time.
do it 3 months.
What's
You
that?
can do it month to month.
I have
Yeah,
one,
well,
two,
don't sign a 6-month
three.
contract.
Judy? What? Were you a no?
The contract's
I
for
was a
6
yes.
months.
No, there's not.
It's a month to
month to
month.
month.
It's a month to
It's just
month.
a recommendation for doing it 6 months.
It was a recommendation
That motion.
for a maximum of.
So that motion failed.
Okay.
Oh, the motion failed?
Yeah.
4-3.
4-3. Thank you.
But if you,
No, I'll stay. I'm good.
All right.
Next is HR committee.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, John. Brian, do you mind doing the HR committee?
The first item up on the list is just review of the, actually, which is the first item? Is it compensation? Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. First item up is the compensation package. We've had discussions with, kind of referenced by Steve and Randy, with both the HR and budget committees over the last several months about putting forward compensation packages at this time of the year so that we can start our fiscal year by paying the correct wage as opposed to delaying that and doing a back pay process. And so what we have in front of you is our packages for 5 of the 6 employment groups. What we are asking the board to take action on tonight does not include the teachers. Teachers, as you are aware, include 2 components, base wage that is negotiated and then a supplemental wage, which is set by the board. We would need to open negotiations with the teachers to take care of the base wage part, and then we would propose that we would allow some more clarity to come with the state budget process over the summer for us to set that supplemental part of their wage before they would start to receive their checks in September after school has begun. For the other groups, admin and admin support, admin assistants, classified staff, and custodial maintenance. The base increase, or the wage for all of those groups is 2%. That's for the admin and admin support groups, it is only 2%. And then for the hourly groups, what is in front of you reflects two things. First, we have, as you guys put in place last year, built a salary matrix for our hourly employee groups. That's based on an anniversary date. Someone moves from one box or one step to the next. So this would reflect that there's movement on an anniversary, and it also reflects then that the whole matrix was raised by 2% in the administrative assistant group. In the classified staff group, it has what I just described, and it also has targeted raises for 3 classifications. We have a 50-cent increase, 2% and 50% increase for our special education paraeducators, 2% and $1 per hour increase for our regular ed paras, and 2% and $1 per hour for our health and tech assistants. And then the final group, custodial maintenance, includes 2%, a minimum of 2%, but then targeted raises for our regular custodians of 2% and $1 per hour. And to keep the scales consistent with our head custodians making more than our regular custodians who they're supervising, that scale was recalibrated so that is actually a larger amount than 2% and $1. It's closer in most cases to around 10%. And then as Steve can speak to, what we have put forward here is consistent or fairly consistent with what we've been working on through the draft parts of the budget. This is again based off of the conservative budget approach that the district has taken to this point. And so there is some safety in this package for the district, but also some recognition that employees can be paid a new, higher, and more competitive wage immediately as opposed to waiting for a later point. So I can take any questions that folks have about Dave.
On the custodian, I guess I didn't understand. You said you recalibrated the head custodian to keep them ahead of their custodians, which makes sense.
Yep.
And you gave the custodians 2% plus $1.
Yep.
Yeah, which would be what total percentage roughly?
I
mean, it's saying 377, but I'm guessing that's not really it.
That would be the full package of the raise there.
Okay, then on the head custodians, in order to keep them ahead, you had to give them a 10% raise?
Well, it's somewhere around that. And so what it was originally is that our beginning head custodians were making a lower wage than our 15-year regular custodians.
Oh, I see.
And so
you're going back
to give you
they weren't ahead to start with.
Correct. Yeah.
Now I
To give you numbers on that, David.
I got it.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
I was just wondering why. It didn't mathematically make sense to me.
Okay.
Now it does.
So where's our starting wage for custodians then?
With this proposal, our starting wage for a custodian without experience would be $16.82. would be the next July 1 wage. The current starting wage is $15.51.
And how does that put us, how does that stack us up against other districts or other opportunities for the same type of job?
Well, part of the challenge is that I've got to base off what districts are paying this year, and folks, the districts have not set what their wage will be for next year. So there's some unknown with that.
But they can
what I
also
would say
get
is-
a job in the private industry as a custodian, right?
Yeah, so I mean,
How does that compare?
Well, my data that I pulled is from comparable school districts. And so what this particular package would do would put us it would put us within a dollar of right now the median wage, average wage paid to the Dane County suburban school districts. It would, on a scale basis, would put us slightly ahead of this DeForest School District's scale. It would be more competitive, but not equal to Sun Prairie or Middleton.
I think generally what we see, Jack, is that it seems, at least from when I think back to our previous discussions, private industry was paying a little bit less, and where we're losing people to is surrounding school districts who are not going in. They're not going to a private industry as a custodian. They're going to other school districts that they can do the same job for a different amount.
Any other questions for Brian? If not, I would like a motion to approve the
I move we approve this proposal.
Second.
Judy?
I'm taking Brian.
Brian?
I'm just laughing.
Any other
Yes.
concerns or comments? All in favor of the package, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. Thank you, Brian. Do you want to continue with the rest of the items we?
Yeah.
Next item is the dental benefit, Brian.
Thank you. So what the HR committee advanced was a recommendation from the insurance committee, which is to increase the benefits that we offer in the area of dental and add what's called Checkup Plus, which means that if someone has a health condition, they can get their additional cleanings, additional checkups without that going towards their annual limits. So in essence, it promotes folks going to receive the wellness or the health checks and cleanings that'll help keep them healthier. And then the second benefit is adult ortho. That one is more based on some of the requests that we've received from employees interested either at their own adult age or allowing their children to get dependents or children to get up to age 26 when they're no longer eligible to be on under their parents' benefits. The reason for both of these was that the dental fund we have is extremely healthy. We are, it's off memory, I believe it's about $340,000 right now, which is a very safe amount to have in there. It's actually been over the last 16, 17 months, it's been increasing, and which is somewhat to be expected, obviously, due to COVID. But in speaking with USI, who was our benefits advisor, their actuary team reviewed it. They said that after maybe we might see an initial bump in usage, the net result of adding this will be a zero impact, or likely near zero impact on our dental fund. And so it's a case where we have the fund available with quite a large cushion. It's not going to negatively affect that, and it will give us more benefits to our employees.
Thank you, Brian. So I would be looking for a motion to approve the dental.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any other concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Brian. And
Typically, this would also be where we would make note of the change in the health plan, but there are no changes. We're entering year 4 0% rate increase, zero changes in the benefit. And then the last item within the HR committee is just the first opportunity for viewing or review of the handbooks. Again, past practice has been we review or post for 1 month and take action in the second month. So we would be looking at an action item on the handbooks for our June, or for your June meeting. The biggest change, as you'll note, is that there are 3 handbooks now. One for all of our hourly employee groups, one for our admin and admin support groups, and then one for our teaching group. As the hourly groups and the admin and admin support groups give us really had a lot of similarity that made sense to fold those together.
Just a couple of questions. One, for some reason, the administrator admin assistant handbook wasn't posted to the extras, so we couldn't look at that one. There were 2 of them there, but the third one wasn't.
Okay.
Also, I have a question about, you changed in the childcare use for the FSA.
Yes.
From 20 to 30 hours.
Yeah.
And the note said it was for consistency of benefits, but the previous handbooks, well, there must have been some of them that had 20, some had 30?
No, the consistency was between dependent care and medical flex benefits. To make both set at 30 hours and kept the same between groups. It's actually a change that right now we've not had anyone in the district that works less than 30 hours that takes or uses dependent care flex. And so it was an opportunity to align them and without having any kind of impact on employee groups.
Okay, I guess my feeling is if you work more than half time, you should get the benefits. And I would have gone to 20 instead of 30. But I guess obviously the committees must have recommended it. Usually you have the handbook committee, right? And
the teacher HR work group reviewed that, as did the HR committee at last meeting.
I would just see that was probably a bigger impact on your hourly group than it was on the teacher group. But you said nobody felt between 20 and 30?
There is no one in the district, any employment group that uses it for less than 30 hours.
And my last comment is, I would love to see activities director change to athletic director, because that's what it really
That's
does.
just a mess. Yeah, it's, we changed that a couple of years ago. We probably just got to add that in. It's probably.
It's in the handbook, it still says activities.
We'll make that change.
And that's it, sorry.
Okay, these will come back to us in June and look for approval then. Thank you, Brian. So finally, administrative report. It's not even 10 o'clock yet.
I'm going to keep us moving.
You got 3 minutes to finish it.
I do. Just a few things as we kind of just, we haven't talked really a lot about anything with COVID-related items, so I'm just going to take a moment here to give you an update on our dashboard so you know where we're at. The first front sheet is actually a sheet that Kurt Ely does for us. He does this actually on a daily basis, just so that we know exactly how many students and staff we have who are out on a COVID-related issue, either positive for COVID or who are quarantined. Over the course of the last number of weeks, the highest number we've ever had out in a given day was 160 kids. Today, you can see we are very low. We're at 12. So you can see that our percentage of the district is 0.28% of our district was out on any sort of a COVID-related issue. If you go back over the course of the last, since we've been back, our highest numbers have been right around that 3-4%, where we had, well, I think we had, at the high school, we've been as high as 5 or 6%, and at the middle school, we've been as high as 8 or 9%. But no district, no school has been any higher than that. What we've seen recently is our activity, and you can see on the second page, just kind of shows across the top the number of positive cases. This is not in the school district. This is the community of the school district, all the way from the lake, all the way up, and everybody from birth to the highest age we have in town. So when you take a look at what we've been trending the last 4 days, we had a 0, a 1, a 1, and a 0. Our burden rate today is 7.8. I mean, that's down considerably from where we were. Our 14-day average is 1.57, and our 7-day average is 1.14. Now, we did not have any COVID positives that came into us at the school district today. So starting off tomorrow, we'll be again at a relatively low number. Obviously, if we have a positive COVID student at school, it impacts us from a close contact piece, so there's variability in these numbers. But just as a snapshot, this gives you an idea of where we're at and where we've been trending over the last number of days. Any questions about that?
The students have the ability to go virtual for no reason related to this. Is there any one keeping track of that?
Some kids, yeah, there's it's
You know
not
what
part
I mean?
about
There's
tracking
plenty that
it.
are case up, but like given the chance, I want to go virtual. So
Yeah, we've had a number of kids go virtual. I'm not sure if we have any, I don't have that specific data, Ted, but we've had kids that have kind of come in and out for various reasons. I don't know what that percentage is, and I don't know, Kurt, if I haven't seen that one.
I don't know what that is. I do know that is happening, you know, that some people are deciding for a period of time at the high school that they want to be virtual, and Mr. Borowski and the staff there have allowed that to happen.
Yep.
So I don't know a number. Do you
Because
have a number?
I don't have a number. It's happening to a degree, but as it happens, as Kurt said, Brian and the administration team are trying to get those kids back in.
Randy, is this students out due to positive COVIDs or just out in general? Sorry, I missed.
It's either positive COVID or a close contact.
Okay. And yes, I know kids are going in and out.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the pieces that when you take a look at their model, being that concurrent instruction model, they're able to, it's difficult for some of the staff to keep track of some of those pieces, but it's definitely been a piece our administration at the high school has been allowing to take place, and there's been kids kind of moving in out of that model a little bit more fluidly. It's not something we can do at the elementary and at those levels, but at the high school, certainly that's the case. The other pieces that we have is we do have a clinic coming up this Thursday where we are providing, we're in partnership with Hometown Pharmacy. I believe we're giving about 100 vaccinations.
102.
102.
We have 102.
So that's positive. That's for our 16 and older students. The difference between that clinic and like the SSM one we did with staff was Hometown Pharmacy really doesn't provide a whole lot of staff for us. We get their pharmacist for a short period of time. Otherwise, that's totally run by our staff. So that's everything from drawing the vaccine out of the vials to administering it. So the 102 kids that we can do, we're going to be able to manage that. The conversation we've had is now that it's opened up to 12 to 15-year-olds, the volume of that we are not able to handle as a district. So to run a similar type of clinic where we ran like 1,000 people through for our staff, we're not able to really do that at that level right now. But obviously that is opening up. I saw the approval came through the FDA today that now has to get approved by DHS, and then it'll open up statewide. So once we have more information about that, we'll get that pushed out. But
As I say something foolish here, do we want to try to do something like that?
I think our piece right now is we found from when we did our survey of like high school students, 70% in the survey were coming back that they had already started the sequence. So I know talking to some parents, they've already started to register at least to get in line with their elementary kids. So our thought is that we'd probably let that first iteration move that direction, and then we would probably see if we could do something later. That's what our thought is. But that gives you an update on kind of where we're at with our COVID data. I want to keep moving here on a couple other items. The orders and the guidelines were released on May 3rd. I mean, these are the things that public health orders will get released pretty much every month until the point in time where they don't release them anymore. The general changes that you've seen in there were some accommodations for band instruments. That was how you can play band. I think we were already ahead of some of those pieces, and that's working fine. It also changed kind of the outdoor spaces, and there's really no limit right now on an outdoor gathering limit. So that's a piece we've talked about as far as like sporting events and spectators. The biggest piece that we managed there is just trying to identify how many people we can fit safely within a venue. But there is no cap right now on that level, so like during like the football season, we have to be very careful that there weren't people sitting up on the grass. At this point, that doesn't bother us. The second piece that we have is the last meeting we had, you said we should be following like WIAA regulations and Badger Conference. Right after our meeting, WIAA got rid of all of the requirements as far as masking, and it's all just recommendations. I think across the Badger Conference and across the county, there's a few different perspectives on it. Where we have landed with this is for what we have viewed as our contact sports, which was soccer and lacrosse. We keep all of our kids masked on the sidelines, but when they're playing, soccer and lacrosse are masked while they're playing, because those are like in contact more sports. For our other sports that are non-contact, tennis, golf, track and field, while they're actually participating in that event and running and playing, they don't need to be masked, but while they're on the sidelines in the dugout, they do. So that's generally where we're at. The one piece that we feel that we need to make a few changes with is the outside spectators and masking, because the CDC, DHS, nor our public health department have anything about being at an outdoor event and requiring a mask. And when you start to try to do that it's causing an administrative issue for us. So from our perspective, it's something that we would recommend, but it's definitely not a piece that we would recommend having as a requirement moving forward here. Particularly given kind of the outdoor venues that we have, we feel that's, I think, a reasonable direction for us to be going and continuing as these pieces evolve. So as long as the board is comfortable with that, that is how we're really moving forward.
You need a motion on that, or?
I don't think so. I think you gave us guidance last time that was sufficient. I just wanted to make sure it was clear of how we were doing that. So if you see spectators unmasked, that's fine.
Yep.
The last thing is just an update on facilities use. The last time we met, we really limited any additional outside groups to our facility groups using our school facilities. We said we would bring that back this month with a review. Yeah, Steve, if I can just have you mute your mic. Thank you. As I talked to Aaron and Christy Nacker, there's three areas that we think that we would ask for consideration by the board to allow between now and the end of the year, and that would be we're now done with our school swim teams. We are doing some of the pieces with the youngest kids and swimming lessons. We're doing some pilots there. We feel that at this point we could also accommodate community lap swim. We're not opening it up yet to the wave. We think that can be something that we do when school is out, and then they can have access. But at this point, we'd open it up to lap swim. We've also taken a look at our facilities view that we could help accommodate youth soccer and youth lacrosse. So if those groups if there was time available to be able to use Warrior Stadium or the soccer field, which are lined for those two sports, we feel that that would be an accommodation that we could make at this time and start moving that forward a little bit sooner. That is a piece I would ask for your recommendation and vote on, because that's how we've kind of operated throughout the...
I'll make a motion that we support that proposal.
I second it.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. So lap swim, youth soccer, youth lacrosse will move forward with. All right, awesome. Ready to move on?
Yep. I think you have one more item.
Yep, the next item I have is with regards to the proposed plan for addressing Native American imagery. get to where I'm at. What I've put in your packet is a proposal that really outlines some of the recent events that we've had in decisions and discussions that have happened at the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, what have come to the Goals Committee of the board, and then what has come through the full board itself. What I walked away with from both the Goals Committee and the last board meeting was really, I felt direction to really bring a process forward that we could consider for how we would address Native American imagery and some of the related issues associated with that. Particularly, I broke this into really 3 areas that I think it's really started off, I think, as one conversation at DEI, which was around a mural in the gym, and then it also was with revolving around just general imagery that we have within the school district, and the appropriateness and the timeliness and the process for reviewing that. I've also added in here the Native American culture and curricular pieces, because I think out of the discussions over the course of the last number of months, that has definitely been a piece that has also been included in our work around this, particularly as it's connected with the sesquicentennial. So as we've taken a look at how to move these pieces forward, I view that we should be looking at those 3 items. The imagery as it relates to the mural, the second piece, which is the visualization, which is also part of some of the branding pieces we talked about earlier, and then additionally looking at the curricular side of it. What I have proposed here is really to put together, and I think this is the direction I heard from the board, was wanting to have a process in place for us to review these. What I have proposed here is a committee structure made up of the superintendent, director of curriculum, high school principal, communications and engagement director, a school board member, and then members of our indigenous community and students and other. I believe that a committee structure is important as we kind of walk through this. I think that these are some key people that need to be part of that process. If the board desired, they could also tie this into one of the board committees, but I would recommend then that there be some extended membership to these folks, because I think that a broader perspective is important. Part of what I view that this group will be looking for, and or the committee that is associated with this and assigned this work, should be meeting with and discussing some of the history of where we are with the imagery we have in our district, particularly learning around some of the things associated with the mural. I think we should reach out to some of the folks that we've made connections with the Ho-Chunk Nation, to have some discussion with regards to their perspective, and to learn from them as far as what they view is appropriate as we move forward with our work here. We should also get the input of staff, students, and others. I would see that this committee, or the group that is assigned this work, would come back to the board with a recommendation on how to address the concerns around the mural of the old gym. I also would like the committee to think about alternative recognition and ways that we can promote the Native culture within our schools. Second item is, I think that we should be looking at any guidance. We talked about the branding process and focus groups. I think this committee could be representative of representing this perspective within that branding process. And then also wanting to recommend that we continue to seek partnership beyond the sesquicentennial celebration with the Ho-Chunk Nation, with some of the work that we're doing curricular-wise. So ideally, I'd like to get this work started here before the end of the school year, so that I can have some actionable pieces coming out potentially yet this summer, and some direction going into the work that we've already set forth. And I guess what I'm looking for tonight is your thoughts, consideration, feedback on the proposal, particularly on the direction as far as what we're looking as actionables, and then also what you would foresee that committee structure looking like, and if that should be tied to any work of the board.
I like what you put out here. I think a broader group is better than the small goals committee. Certainly, any board member could be, a part of the discussion, obviously, and should be probably, but, I think this states that, it's not an issue that we are turning away from. It's one that we are actually facing and going to find a right decision for our district and everyone involved. So I'm in favor of this plan.
What is your vision on timing of it? Obviously, you want to get this thing started. When's the sunset on this committee, or is this another one of those committees that goes on forever?
No, I don't think it's a committee that goes on forever. I think it's really, you see the three actionable pieces here. And I think those are the things that we focus on. I think some of these recommendations could be brought forth to the board this summer. I think some of them are going to be feedback loops into the branding process we talked about earlier. And the third part is going to be a continual aspect, which is kind of the curricular work. But I think that this committee doesn't need to, once we kind of have those pieces established, I see this committee just really kind of steering the work, making sure that there's accountability to it. And as I said, the committee can be structured as the manner of which I proposed it here. It could also be this structure tied into one of our board committees so that there is some more visual aspects to it. I really am open to kind of which direction the board would go. But I think regardless, the actionable pieces that we have are the things that are important and imperative as we move forward.
My suggestion would be to tie it to the goals committee, hold it in a public format so that everyone can see what's happening, so that this doesn't, I think part of the problem is that there's going to have to be a lot of buy-in in the long run by the community. The more public and open we do it, the better. Don't hold it during the day meetings. You hold them at night just like we do this, so anyone who wants to see it can hear it, can come, can make their comment. I don't think it has to be I like your committee layout sort of right now, but I also encourage board members who have a strong opinion about this to be there, because it's going to be a lot easier to talk about it there than wait 4 months, 5, 6 months down the road and re-talk everything. I think that's been part of the problem.
And of the concept, from what you're building off of, if it did go to like the goals committee, would your concept be also to include some of the other members of this?
I would include the whole list you have, but have it be part of that so it's an open public meeting that anyone who had a strong opinion can come and make a comment on the agenda.
But can't we do that like the medical ad hoc? Could this be
you could set it up that
a
way.
committee that could be in the evening like medical ad hoc?
Or DEI, similar to both of those.
So that any committee or any person on the board who has a strong desire could be there, not simply full.
If you were to set it up as like an ad hoc committee of that nature, I'd probably ask that there be another board member as part of it. We'd still have this membership, and then it would just, and then I think you do have it as then you have to put a sunset to it, as Jack is putting it.
Right.
Otherwise you tie it to a committee like Dave is. If the desire is to kind of have it in a public forum like this where we record it and it has that level of input, tying it to one of those processes is the way to do it.
I like the idea of the ad hoc, and I would suggest we could tie it to sunsetting with the completion of the branding process.
So I guess what I would, are we setting up another DI diversity committee to take care of this? That's exactly what it sounds like. This, what we should do is handle these 3 topics, put a sunset on it. Basically what they should be doing is, if you want to tie it to the goals committee or the HR committee or wherever you want to put it, they continue to feed into that committee so that direction can be given. I think this is important, from a community standpoint. It's just like the health and, where
you know, we put together a process and we rolled it out so that, you know, it didn't create controversy in the community.
Right. You know, Jack, and that's, I think, what you're saying is this should function like the health committee, and I think that's what it's going to do. That's like, you're putting this group together for a one-time purpose to end when the branding process is done. The health committee was this kind of thing.
The only way I'd support this is when is the end date?
End of the branding. Some
I
sort
think
of
a lot of
branding's
things
never
there
gonna
aren't
end.
tied to the branding thing. though.
I would say it's, if you're looking at kind of when that first phase of branding comes to an end, it's next summer. So that's kind of what the proposal would be. So, I mean, I think some of these items are,
I think some of them are gonna end before then.
I think some of them are gonna.
One of them's gonna end before
most-
then, one of them's gonna end when branding ends, and the other one's basically gonna turn over some ideas to the curriculum committee
Correct.
for a long-term dealing with.
And I think that the initial work of the committee is going to be, it's going to be front-loaded towards the front of the committee because it's going to be dealing with providing, it's going to, in essence, serve as kind of one of those targeted focus groups for the branding process. And then they can be, but I don't see this as being the committee that's going to be there for branding because that's something that Andy wants a different group working for. I see this as kind of just being an input piece. It can be relatively, this potentially has impacts of 6 months. And just, I mean,
doesn't need to be with the branding though. Maybe the branding should be taken off.
Well, I think they should provide the input though of not saying what the branding should be, but maybe saying what it shouldn't be.
And I
To
don't,
ensure that certain things aren't included in.
I don't know if it needs to go to an ad hoc. I mean, it could be, it certainly can go there. You could just tie it to one of the committees.
I would agree. I would
Could be
agree.
a piece, you just tie it right to that committee, and you just say the goals committee is going to meet, and it'll have this expanded kind of representation, and it's an open meeting. So it could certainly work from that respect. That accomplishes the open meeting piece of it, and it's kind of, it's within a current committee that then has delegation and reporting back here on a monthly basis.
I agree. I mean, it's already with the goals committee by motion anyway. So I think it should stay there. I think we add these components to it and we move on it
But
quickly.
I do think in order to make it be that public event, you don't schedule it during the day.
Right.
Otherwise, you're severely limiting the public's ability to do that.
But it would be recorded.
Yeah. I think we can record it, and I think and then I think the charge of the committee, if the board is agreeable, would basically be taking this proposal, directing it to the goals committee with the extended membership here for input, and then the charges that were outlined in the document would be part of what the goals committee would work on.
So, do you want a motion on that?
I would, yes, please.
So, someone make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept this proposal and tie it to the goals committee with the three-pronged directive that's stated in the proposal.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So we just have a few.
Yep, next item is consideration of a full-time interpreter for the special ed department. You can see a memo that was put forth by Kurt Ely with regards to the needs that have been developed here, and looking for support of this moving forward. This is in relation to an IEP of a student that has needs required for these services.
Make the motion to move it forward.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just wondered, what kind of an interpreter is this?
It's for a student who has a hearing impairment, so it
Okay,
would be.
hearing.
Yeah.
Sign.
Yep, thank you.
Sign like that?
Yep.
Yep.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item we heard and we discussed in the hearing at the very beginning of the meeting, which was regulatory flexibility for next year in the bilingual program. So I think we had our discussion and presentation on that. I'm just looking for board's action to move forward with submitting that waiver for the 1 year.
Motion to move the waiver forward.
Second.
I would just like to comment that I think it's unfortunate we didn't see this number coming, such that we wouldn't have to request a year and hold off a year on doing the program. I hope that as we look at this going forward, we get this set up so that the next ones we can move in before the students show up. So I think that would be good. And the other thing is, from what I've seen of other programs like this, I think we should allow it to be a magnet school. Wherever we set it up, that we should allow students to opt to go to that school in order to take advantage of the extra benefit of that program, no matter which school they normally would bus to.
What I will commit to is as we kind of develop that bilingual, bicultural program, that model will come back through here. It'll come through the curriculum committee. It'll come back through the board so you can see what it looks like. But as Chris mentioned earlier, there are different models here that we have to vet out and consider.
Any other concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Announcements and correspondence. This is just the annual update on the wellness clinic, so there's no action or presentation on that, but if you have any questions, Brian.
Quarterly update.
Quarterly update, thank you, Brian. If there's any questions with regards to that summary, Brian can answer those and just get in touch with him. Otherwise, we're on to the consent agenda.
So consent agendas, we can take them all at once, or if anybody needs something pulled out.
Make the motion to move it all along.
Do I have a second?
Second. There's an honest.
Any concerns?
Just want to recognize the tweets for the music school scholarship.
Yeah, thank you. Again, Jan and Ted Tweed have donated considerable money. How much was it? $1,500. And those award winners, I think, will be announced at
Actually, it's $2,000.
$2,000. So yes, thank you to Jan and Ted Tweed for that generous donation. Any other concerns on the consent agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect, thank you. Board business, correspondence, upcoming meetings.
All right. First of all, I'm going to start off with a request for an additional board meeting. This is one to really meet with EUA and Vogel partners so that we can kind of reorientate where we left off last March on facility planning. I'm recommending that we take a look at June 7th, if that's possible. 6 o'clock, a 2-hour meeting from like 6 to 8. That'd be possible. June 7th.
Is it 7 or 11?
7.
June 7th.
Thank you.
So Monday the 7th, from 6 to 8.
So we do need a motion.
I do need a motion for
For
that.
a special meeting.
So move.
Second. All in favor of the special meeting for June 7th, say aye.
Aye.
All right, very good. Steve, do you need a budget committee?
Yes, Randy, hopefully the week of June 7th, please.
Okay. So our new budget committee is Jack, Mark, and Joan. Week of the 7th, is there a day that works best for you?
I'm good any day.
I'm good any day.
How long do you need?
How long do you need, Steve?
I would say 90 minutes.
I'm good any day that, we've got a medical committee, don't we? On the 8th?
At 6.
What the heck just happened?
Can we do it after that, or?
What days are medical advisory?
That's on Tuesday?
Yeah, I must see that.
Tuesday, June 8th at 6 PM.
I would assume that would be a short one.
That should be. Yeah. So,
Go after that.
I'm gonna go after that on the 8th.
Yeah,
That'd be like, you wanna just stay at 6:30, and then if, whenever we get done, we can jump into it?
yeah, let's
That
do
work for
that.
you?
So what time?
6:30
On,
or June 8th.
Brian, you're looking at an HR committee, and what we'd like to do is have a committee meeting and then also a negotiations with the WTA.
Yeah, two,
Okay?
joint,
And you're
joint.
looking at the
Two purposes.
week of the 17th, is that right, Brian?
Yeah, either something later in that week or like early in the 24th, 25th range, so,
Of May.
of May, yes, yep.
Oh,
Good any of those days.
What were the dates again?
If we could look at Wednesday the 19th, or Thursday the 20th, or Monday, Tuesday, 24th, 25th.
What if we
Monday,
look at
Tuesday works for me.
Tuesday?
Tuesday, the 25th.
You're looking at the 18th. Brian, you were looking at Tuesday, the 18th?
That would be, well, actually, selfishly, I'd like to go to a track meet that night.
All right, no problem.
So Tuesday, the 25th?
There's one that night also, I guess, but
How about-
if that's the night that
How
works,
about the
that's,
19th? Can we go Wednesday?
The 19th is a.
We can go during the day.
At 6 o'clock.
yeah, well, the negotiations part we could.
Oh, that's right.
What about the 24th, a Monday?
24th of Monday is great for me.
Works for me.
Works for me.
Okay.
24,
What time do you want to go?
I'd say start at 4 o'clock and probably factor, if we factor, you know, it should take maybe an hour for negotiations, hour for the committee meeting, 2 hours total,
Okay.
just to be conservative.
Okay.
All right, and for, what I'm gonna do for goals committee, because I know that's a piece we're gonna have to get started with the process we just talked about. Let me get, they have to coordinate that with a number of other people too. So let me kind of find some dates and you and I can coordinate how we're gonna do that. But we'll get that going here before this next board meeting. So the goals committee is Joan, Brian, and Jack, so we'll be in contact with. Any other committees right now? Oh, yes, thank you, Brian. We have the staff recognition program on Friday, May 21st. So if you, that'll be a piece that we're doing at the PAC. You are very welcome to join us and invited to be part of that. That starts at 7 p.m.
Really happy to see that back on the calendar. Thank you.
And just a last piece before is this Friday at 8 a.m. Brian, Ted, and I, and a few members of EUA and Vogel are going to walk through Heritage Middle School, High School. That was a tour everybody else went on a year ago, but I want to make sure I catch those two up before we get into further discussions facility-wise. So if anybody else is available or wants to join us, just let me know.
When is that, Randy?
8 o'clock on Friday the 14th. We'll meet at Heritage.
I think we're finished, so motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I don't know.
That was a long
welcome
one.
aboard.